How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Some idea.
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my actions.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
is the end. I'm burning in the Soviet. There's no base too high. I'm burning in the Soviet. This is the final genocide. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the Soviet. There's no base too high. I'm burning in the Soviet. This is the final
Control the language, shape the mind. Dictate the culture, keep the masses blind. The party's hand, it moves unseen. Altering words, reshaping the scene. They twist the truth, they bend the light, crafting their narrative out of sight. Every term they redefine to serve their purpose, to toe their line. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's their prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equity, saying their language weaves a twisted game. Each word a tool, each phrase a ploy to quote the truth in their employ. Bourgeoisie oppressors they claim. Equity's their utopia's name. Whiteness, racism, systemic fly. All roads lead back to their abolition fight. Fascism dubbed as free market's dream, abolishing individual liberties, their scheme. Normativity, patriarchy's grip, all intertwined, their narrative flip. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's the prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equity, saying their language weaves a twisted game. Each word a tool, each phrase a ploy to quote the truth in their employ. Queer and trans, they declare the war on capitalism's norm they're restore. Gender binary, the nuclear family's whole. Their destruction is the goal. Imperialism, colonization's reign. Decolonization to break the chain. The police, enforcers, their name. Guardians of capital, their claim. Their language shapes, their rhetoric binds. To break the cycle, to free our minds. For in their words, their hidden game, capitalism's grip, they aim to tame. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's their prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equities, in their language weaves the twisted game. Each word is tool, each phrase a ploy to quote the truth in their employ. Control the language, control the crowd. Within our hearts the truth is loud. Their words may twist, their meanings bend, but in the end our voices ascend.
Now remember, I am never late. The rest of you are merely early. I am never late. I'm always on time. I am the queen of my channel. That means I'm always on time. And time isn't even real. For new people to the channel, do you guys know that time isn't real? No, for real. We'll talk about that later today. We'll talk about that at our 9 p.m. show. Yes, you didn't even notice that I was right on time, Reagan. I appreciate you not noticing that I was right on time, of course. Well, welcome, guys. This is The Cult. This is a show that I stream Monday through Friday around 5 p.m. Eastern time, where we do deep dives into the far left, the cult of the far left, if you will. Sometimes we look at the right, sometimes we look at other cults on the internet. But today we are going back to our roots. Today we are going back to communism, because I don't think new people will have an appreciation for this. And welcome for new people. If you are a communism, socialism newbie, if you've just found my content in the last week or so, let us know in the chat. This is going to be a great day for the new people to let us know who they are, because I have been watching progressives for like the last 2 weeks for like the No King stuff. The new people who have not watched communism with me yet will not understand the pain that me and my community have been in for 2 weeks. Because we've had so many new people on the channel, and we appreciate new people here. Look at all the newbies on the channel. Let me turn the chat on so you guys can see it on the screen. And we've had so many new people here, and they're like, Karlyn, the things you're showing us are crazy. And I'm like, you haven't even seen the real stuff yet, bro. You haven't even seen the stuff that we've been watching for the last couple of weeks with the No King stuff. It has been mind-bogglingly painful because it's so boring to me. But I know people are new, and so I'm doing my very best to rein it in and bring new people along. But new people, today's the day. Are you guys ready to get pushed into the deep end of the pool? Actually, I wouldn't even say the deep end. We're not jumping into the deep end of the pool. I'm not like pushing you off the side or anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you in, and we're going to go into like the medium end, and you're going to put your legs in the water, and you're going to get in the pool. And then we're going to make sure you're not going to drown or nothing, but then we're going to slowly push you towards the deep end of the pool. This is going to be probably the easiest entry point that I can give you guys to communism. And you're going to see the difference. I promise you. You are going to see the difference between the boring progressive shit that we've been watching and actual communism and actual socialism. And then you're going to be addicted, and then you're going to want to watch everything. And don't worry, we will watch everything. We do this all the time, and you are going to understand why this stuff is crazy. And we're going to work with you to help. No. Rules for Radicals is we did Rules for Radicals like 4 years ago. We are so far beyond Rules for Radicals. You guys have no idea. Diane, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I really do appreciate it. Today, guys, we are going to introduce you to the wonderful, the magical world of the Denver Communists. The Denver Communists are a group of radical revolutionary communists. They are, predictably, in Denver. I actually met the Denver Communists when I was undercover at the Socialism Conference in 2023. And fun fact, the Denver Communists have awesome t-shirts. Actually, legitimately, they have really cool t-shirts, and I wanted one so bad. And I still wonder if I can get one of those t-shirts. Like, I would pay them money for it. I would do capitalism to buy one of the Denver Communist t-shirts because they're that effing cool. I have a picture of them somewhere. I should go back and find it. Maria Callis fan gifted 5 channel memberships. Who got a membership? Hang on. Lady got a membership. Rosie got a membership. Debaser got a membership. Niralim got a membership. Mary got a membership. And Bill got a... Wait, no, Bill didn't get a membership. Bill is already a member. Billy. Thank you, Maria Callis fan, for gifting some memberships to the channel. Yes. One of the interesting things about the Denver Communists is the Denver Communists started a national syndicate of communists called the Firebrand Collective. So the Denver, so people might say, Karlyn, of course these people are in Denver. That's a very blue area. Yeah, true. Okay, there's a lot of socialism in Denver. Fine. Hey, Tolkien fan, thank you for being a member of the channel. New people, you're going to see stuff you can't unsee. Karlyn is the best at breaking down far-left ideology with primary source evidence. Oh, that's very nice of you to say, Tolkien fan. Appreciate that. So the Denver Communists started a national group of communists called the Firebrand Collective. And essentially, this is like a little communication network that they've set up to like form these alliances. Also within this decentralized network. Oh, we're going to get to two ladies in a second. And so you've got the Denver Communists, you've got the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists, you've got the Boston Revolutionary Socialists. I'm pretty sure New York is now involved in the Firebrand Collective. There are all sorts of different communist groups all over the country that are involved explicitly in the Firebrand Collective, and they share information and they do educational stuff together and things like that. Let's see. Let's thank two ladies for gifting 10 channel memberships. Let's see who got some channel memberships. You guys are on fire today with the channel memberships. This is awesome. Miss Ruby, Nafam, Pretty Angels, Flutterbee Butterflies, Audio Hoax, Soul Whisperer, Jamesy, Susie, Internal. Welcome all new members of the channel. Appreciate you guys being here today. Congratulations. Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys. Very generous all around. So the reason that I selected the Denver Communists to kind of like introduce you guys to communism and to give me and my audience our communism fix is the Denver Communists actually do regular phone calls and regular meetings. They meet every week. We can go inside one of their meetings sometime. We've already done it before. They post their meeting stuff live on the internet, and they just love it when I record their meetings and post them on the internet. So maybe we can do that again sometime. But the Denver Communists actually create a metric ton of communist content. They do short presentations. So they do presentations that are like 15 minutes to a half hour long. So we can watch a bunch of them at the same time. And one of the cool things about the Denver Communists is they do actually tend to speak in plainer English. So a lot of communist groups that we watch, there is a pretty steep learning curve with understanding what these people are saying because they don't speak in English. They speak in an academic sounding language called socialist, which is why I call the presentation where I teach you guys this stuff, how to speak socialist. Socialist is a derivative of English. So it sounds like English, but it's not. They use words in a completely different way. They have completely different meanings. And so some socialist groups are much more difficult to understand than others. The Denver Communists tend to be pretty easy to understand, which is why I like to use them to introduce newbies to it, because it's just like, it's a good entry point. We will, of course, be stopping throughout the presentations, and I will be breaking stuff down for you guys. And of course, I want to encourage all new people, please ask questions. For new people, you are going to get the most out of this experience with communism if you, A, come into the situation with a clean slate. Do not make any assumptions about what these people believe, because a lot of what you guys know from conservative influencers and more right-leaning media is just not true at all. You are going to hear from them today. These are recordings of their private meetings with each other that they record specifically to archive to educate people in their group. And we're very lucky they make them public for us so we can watch them too. But this is how they recruit more people, okay? So we are in their private space. They are going to tell you what they think. And what we're going to do is we're going to listen, and we're going to break down the language, and we're going to figure out, okay, what does that mean in kind of plain English? What are they trying to do? Also, Mitchell brings up a great point. For all the new people, you are going to want to debunk them. You're going to want to say, that's not true for reason X, Y, B, and Z, or that's a stupid idea for reason X, Y, B, and Z. Number one, I promise you, we have heard every single debunk that you can possibly imagine, and not a single one of them makes any difference at all. Because if debunking the far left was all that we needed to do in order to beat them, we would have done that a long time ago. Listen, I wrote an entire book. I had so many feelings about this. I wrote a book called Debunking the Communist Manifesto. Ignore this great thing. This is a proofing copy. I wrote a whole book debunking the communist. I understand debunking. Okay, it's a 400-page book. However, when we are listening to socialists and communists to understand them and to understand how they see the world and to understand what they're doing and what their strategy is, we have to put the debunking aside, because every moment and every ounce of energy that you spend debunking something is an ounce of energy that I promise you, you are not listening. You do not have to agree with them in order to understand them. And our goal here is not to debunk them. It's not to own the libs. It is to understand how these people see the world, because that's how we're able to predict what they're going to do next. So I know the urge to debunk is strong. I really do get it, but I'm going to ask you, please don't do that. Please don't. It's going to distract everyone, and it's only going to get in your way from learning as much as you could about them. Hey, two ladies, thanks for the super chat. Karlyn, much love and respect. Let's keep lighting the fire and getting the real truth out. Julietta and Jenny say hi also. Hello, Julietta. Hello, Jenny. Hope you guys are doing well. So, guys, I've picked out a couple presentations from the Denver Communists that I haven't seen yet because, again, they make a ton of content on their channel. So a lot of these presentations are pretty good. Some of them are not pretty good. We've watched a bunch of them. We are regular Denver Communist watchers on the channel because they have so much content that we can consume telling us all about their ideas. See, this just keeps going. So we could literally sit here and watch the Denver Communists like all week and probably not run out of content, which is great for us because we can always go back. However, the Denver Communists have a couple new presentations I want to watch. These are within the last 2 weeks. What is to be done? Revolutionary strategy. I want to watch that one. And then propaganda, agitation, and our tasks. We're going to watch that one. And then I've got a couple more picked out that we might get to, we might not get to. It just depends. I've got this one, Advances, Limits, and Lessons of the Student Intifada, which I think would be interesting. I also have this one. This is an older one, but it's the Denver Communists talking about identity politics. Generally speaking, and this might seem counterintuitive, the far left does not like identity politics. I know people think that all leftists are into identity politics. No, those are Democrats and liberals. Real communists and socialists do not like identity politics. And I kind of want to hear them explain that because that's what they're going to say in this presentation, I promise you. They like identity politics to the extent that they can utilize it to get what they want in the world. But in their utopia, there will be no identity politics because that's actually not how they think. They want the opposite of that. They want to eliminate categories. They don't want to create more. So we might get to that one. We might not. But we are going to do the first two presentations, definitely. And then we're just going to see where we go from there. And I think it's going to be a really great introduction for new people to watching real communism with us. And I really, again, I want to encourage everyone, and I'm going to keep saying this, if you have questions, no matter how simple they are, please ask them in the chat. Either I will answer them or one of the people who've been watching communism and socialism with me for years will answer them. And we'll make sure people have their questions answered because that is the purpose of all of this. Okay. So, yep. Settle in, newbies. Settle in. Settle in. Is there black communism? I mean, there is, but we don't really talk about it a whole lot because it's not honestly super relevant to the things that I care about. Black communists are different than like black communists specifically. You're talking about like the people in the tradition of like Malcolm X. They are kind of a different breed of communists and socialists, to be honest. We don't cover them a ton on the channel, but it is what it is. Anyway. So that's what we're going to be doing today, guys. And as a reminder, if you want to support the work I'm doing, the very best place to do that is over on my Substack. That is Karlyn, Karlyn, newbies.substack.com, where you can sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year. You can also just subscribe for free if you want to. I did a live stream earlier on my Substack about the next steps after the No Kings protest. So make sure you catch up with that. I think I did upload it to my YouTube channel as well, so you can catch up with the replay. Make sure you download the Substack app so you get notifications when I do go live over on Substack. Also, I've started posting some pictures of the Antifa propaganda, starting with these stickers that I got from Antifa over the weekend. So you can kind of see what their propaganda looks like. Oh, looks like they're going to be rioting all summer because they literally have a sticker that says, let's make this a long, hot summer. When you guys follow my content, you will be more prepared than anyone on the internet about what the left is going to do next, what dystopian nightmare is coming our way. And so the very best place to get involved with that is over on the Substack, and then coming to the live streams, of course, which I do really appreciate. Let's just dig right into it, because we got a bunch of stuff to do today. Let us dig right into it. Who is ready for some communism? Mount the like button for me, guys. I'm going to turn my mic down. I feel like my mic is peaking and it's making me sound weird. Hang on. There we go. Who's ready for some communism? Mount the like button for me if you're ready for some communism. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not already. We do this Monday through Friday at 5 p.m., Saturdays at 6 p.m. And for new people, prepare to have your mind blown. This is the Denver Communist. This is called What is to be Done? Revolutionary Strategy.
A little bit on Lenin's work, What is to be Done, and I'm going to try to also explain why I think this is what has to be done now in the context of rebuilding the revolutionary socialist movement here in the United States. So by way of introduction, I just a few points. I want to start by saying that by recognizing that the global capitalist system is in an economic and political crisis.
Capitalism! We are 38 seconds into the presentation, and they're already talking about capitalism. Okay, so what he said is the global capitalist system is in an economic and political crisis. What revolutionary socialists believe is that we are in late stage capitalism. So they believe that capitalism as a cultural model and an economic model is about to fail at any moment. And essentially what they're trying to do with these parties that they're creating, the Denver Communists, the Firebrand Collective, all the other communist groups, what they're trying to do is put together revolutionary organizations so that as soon as the revolution happens, as soon as the spark for the revolution happens, they're already ready to go. That's what they mean when they say revolutionary strategy. And what do they want to do? Well, I very literally have the Denver Communists on video talking about violently overthrowing the government. And in no uncertain terms, I have this group on video talking about violently overthrowing the government. That is what they mean. The Civil War will not be red versus blue. It will not be Democrat versus Republican. It will be radical, revolutionary, socialist versus the federal government. Are they trying to create a sense of urgency for recruitment? Well, yeah, I think that's absolutely part of it, especially since Trump got back into office. 100%.
Global inequality is rapidly increasing to unprecedented levels. The ruling classes in the capitalist countries, in most of the world, are engaging in more direct and overt forms of class war.
See, they're calling it capitalist countries. They believe the United States is a capitalist country. They believe the United States Constitution is a capitalist constitution because they believe the country and the Constitution was founded on the idea of private property ownership. And these are documents and institutions specifically designed to protect private property ownership. When they say capitalism, they don't just mean an economic model. They don't just mean going into the store and buying stuff. They mean a cultural model, the foundation that built the entire country. Everything that we consider normal in society, from gender to the nuclear family to having police in prisons to having borders, all of these things are what they call normativity, or the norms that uphold capitalism, and they want to abolish all of those things. Don't they believe every country that isn't explicitly socialist is a capitalist country? Well, yeah, I mean, generally speaking, that is unironically the binary. You're right about that.
Against their people. And inter-imperialist crisis is pushing more countries towards war. And if I were a pessimistic person, I would say that we're possibly already in the early stages of a world war.
Probably so.
On the other hand, global unrest, protest, and class struggle internationally reached an unprecedented peak by the eve of the pandemic, and I would argue has been scaling up amid the brewing crises ever since. I was just reading today.
No, they don't. No, they don't. When they say capitalism, they mean private property ownership for everyone. They do not mean wealth or culture envy. That's not true.
Anecdotally, well,
how do they differentiate between liberalism and capitalism? They don't. These are not liberals. These people hate liberals. These people believe that liberals uphold capitalism. So this is another reason why it's very dangerous that the right fucks around with this and they say liberals are communists, Democrats are communists, everyone's a communist. Well, no, they're actually not. And real communists will tell you they hate liberals. They do not identify as liberals at all. They consider AOC and Bernie Sanders to be liberals. They denounce them at every opportunity. You're probably going to hear them denounce it in this presentation. What do they plan to do? Well, they control the food supply. So if you don't do what they want you to do, you don't eat. So unless you plan on running a farm, building a homestead, living independently, they control the food. So good luck.
In terms of supporting or illustrating an example of this, it was just published a 2025 Tufts University poll. And there's been a trending in polling in the United States, basically, which really is kind of like documenting and charting the crisis and the sort of fragmentation of society and the declining support for U.S. ruling institutions. And so this recent poll was geared towards.
Hang on. First of all, classical liberalism is on the left. There is no universe in which classical liberalism is on the right. I know that's a lie that's been sold to you by conservative media, but that's not true. Classical liberalism is on the left. Secondly, classical liberalism is synonymous with capitalism. They do not differentiate. Individualism is the opposite of capitalism, or excuse me, the opposite of communism. Individualism is also synonymous with capitalism because you cannot have capitalism without individualism. You cannot have individualism without capitalism. So those two things go together. But to be very, very, very clear, classical liberals are absolutely 100% on the left. Let's see. Got a couple questions. Only literal retards believe this, Dustin, so this is not actually correct. The left are nothing but grievance-oriented, fake oppressed groups. No. Only retards believe this. We are not retards here, Dustin. If you're looking for dumb content, go over to the quartering, okay? You don't bring that shit here. Weren't we told that only conservatives control the food supply and the left does? Okay, this is what we call a debunk. We do not debunk when we're watching communism because it doesn't matter how many times you point out their hypocrisy. Nothing is going to change. You don't win any points here by doing this. It's only a distraction. It has never worked to defeat the left ever in the history of the left. So we don't debunk when we're watching communism because it's like a pointless futile exercise that just prevents you from listening and learning. Let's see.
18 to 29-year-olds and gauging support for U.S. ruling institutions. And what's interesting is that this poll shows what could be characterized as a generational collapse amongst people under the 30 in terms of their support for the U.S. government and for the U.S. ruling institutions. And so I quote from the survey: 31% of the Gen Z survey respondents.
Hey, bro, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. We are not liberals on this channel, or I am. If I just want to be very clear, I think liberals allow communists to win. So if you're trying to generate support for classical liberalism on this channel, it's probably not going to work out for you. You're welcome to be a classical liberal and consume my content. But just to be very, very clear, I believe it's the classical liberals that allow the communists to win, and it's not even close. I'm basically a fascist. So I just don't want there to be any confusion about what I believe. I believe that classical liberalism sucks. I believe it's horrible. I believe it has got us into almost every single problem we're dealing with today. And I don't support it. So, all right, fair enough. Fine.
Who do not buy into the value of U.S. democracy. I would say bourgeois democracy. They have little confidence that the system works for them. Just 36% of that people under 30 say the U.S. democracy can address the issues the country is facing. Only 7% strongly agree that the crises of this system can be resolved through the existing institutions, while 84% of respondents believe that the bourgeois democratic system, or the U.S. democratic system, is failing them.
Why are they calling it the bourgeois democratic system? Pop quiz for the chat. And newbies, I want to encourage you to answer the pop quizzes. You will learn this content faster if you do the pop quizzes. Why do you think the communist is calling the United States a bourgeois democratic system? A bourgeois democracy. We've now heard him say that twice in like the last 2 minutes. Why do communists consider the United States to be a bourgeois democratic system or a bourgeois democracy? What does that mean? What is he saying, do you think? I'm just waiting for some answers in the chat. I know it takes a minute sometimes. And I'm just going to wait for some new people to put some answers in there, and then I'm going to tell you what the right answer is. Okay. Bobby, the United States of capitalism? Yeah, basically. Let's see. Only going to highlight correct answers. If you don't get a correct answer, don't feel bad, okay? Hang on, I just had a chat jump. Because the U.S. Constitution was written by property owners for property owners. Correct. That's a good answer. Bourgeois refers to the capitalist system, and they believe the U.S. government is a capitalist government. Correct. It is bourgeois is another way of saying capitalism. The Constitution not only allows capitalism, but is written to protect capitalism. Upholders of capitalism. Exactly. Because the bourgeois advocate capitalism and private and not personal property. This is really important, Sharon. Not personal property, private property. Because we talked about this yesterday on stream. What socialists and communists try to do is they try to trick people by saying, we're not going to take your personal property. We're not going to take your stuff. Because they distinguish between personal property and bourgeois private property. But what we actually care about is them abolishing bourgeois private property, which means your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord, your ability to own intellectual property, your ability to own a private business, whether that private business is big or small, and your parental rights. So they don't want to take like your truck or your computer or your cat or anything because that's your personal property. They do want to take away your ability to own a home, land, all that other stuff, and to have parental rights over your kids, which is what we care about. And that is a really important distinction. They're calling the bourgeois democracy because they believe capitalism benefits the private property owners. Exactly. Because it's capitalist. Yes. Exactly. Well done. Lots of right answers in the chat.
And so this is where I want to leap into talking a little bit about Lenin, but more specifically, the project that we're engaged in, which is the formation of a new revolutionary organization, one that will be working towards the formation of a revolutionary vanguard party of the working class, and one that will engage in preparation and organization for revolutionary struggle.
What does he mean when he says revolutionary struggle? They just told us they are creating a party, the Denver Communists, as a revolutionary vanguard organization to prepare for the revolutionary struggle. Listen again.
Which is the formation of a new revolutionary organization, one that will be working towards the formation of a revolutionary vanguard party of the working class, and one that will engage in preparation and organization for revolutionary struggle.
They're creating a revolutionary vanguard party to engage in preparation and organization for revolutionary struggle. What do they mean when they say that, guys? They're creating a party to engage in preparation and organization for revolutionary struggle. There's 3 fists on the thing right now. Yeah, he's talking about overthrowing the federal government. That's what they're talking about. When they say revolutionary struggle, they mean overthrowing the capitalist bourgeois system and replacing it with Marxism. That's what they mean. It like explicitly. A revolution against the capitalist state. Yup. But what does that mean explicitly? It means overthrowing the federal government. These people are having meetings on the internet about overthrowing the federal government and then uploading those videos to YouTube. And they could not be more clear once you understand them. Yeah, see, this is why we watch communism. 5 minutes in, and you're like, why isn't the FBI arresting these people? And you're like, oh, they've been doing this for years openly on the internet? Oh, wow. Okay. What other crazy shit are they saying? Oh, we're going to find out.
And so I want to look at summarizing some of the points made by Lenin in the book, What is to be Done. I want to look at 2 important points that that he makes. One is for arguments for revolutionary theory and practice as the motor of the revolutionary socialist organization and/or party, and 2, the importance of and the role of the revolutionary paper as an instrument for organizing the revolutionary party and revolutionary struggle. Okay, so jumping right in. This is being written.
Okay, we just got a bunch of questions in the chat. And I'm going to answer these questions, guys, but like, I want to encourage everyone. Okay, I know I said ask questions, and I do mean ask questions. I do want you to. But I also want to encourage people to just kind of like sit back and listen a little bit as well. And try not to freak out as we do this. Don't they need the military to overthrow the government? Well, you don't think they're in the military, Rosie? Aaron Bushnell, a year ago, in a military uniform, lit himself on fire outside one of the embassies or somewhere in Washington, D.C. In uniform. He's in the military. They're in the military. They are absolutely in the military. And so and actually, I do actually have, I think, these people specifically on video talking about getting people into the ranks in the military because what they want to do is turn the military against the government, essentially. It might not be them. It might be another group, but they are absolutely 100% in the military. The military is not conservative. What type of people fall into this thinking? Is it mostly young people? I mean, no, like there's a whole range of communists. I mean, there are a lot of young people, obviously, because of the public schools. They're indoctrinated into it in the public schools. But then you have like old hippie socialists and communists. You have people that are 2nd and 3rd generation communists. I mean, you have people that are just struggling in the world financially and they don't know how to get out of it. And to those people, communism is very appealing. There are a lot of reasons why people might go into this ideology, and it's not all that they're mentally ill. A lot of them are raised in this, and they're taught this in the schools. But when they say revolution, will it be a bloody one? Oh, yeah. Yeah. But they're going to target the violence at the federal government. They want to overthrow the government. They don't want to kill all the people. They want to overthrow the government. Now, Will they kill people probably that get in their way? Yeah, probably will. But hopefully it'll be quick, I guess. And Donnie girl, I've been screaming about this on the internet for years. And so, if it's against the law, I would have assumed something would have been done about it at some point. I love this. We're 5 minutes into a presentation and we're already talking about overthrowing the government. Just scrolling through to see what other questions. Okay, let's keep going. And guys, again, it's okay to ask questions, but just try to sit back and listen to some of it as well. And we'll stop and break it down too. If you're going to ask questions, please try to make the questions relevant to what is actually being discussed in the presentation. That'll just help keep us on track. I know you guys have questions about a lot of things, but let's just focus on what's being said in the presentation. What makes them think their version of Marxism will be any better than genocides of the past? Because they believe that America is a fully industrialized society and that in order to have successful Marxism or communism, you have to do it in an industrialized society. So they believe one of the reasons that real Marxism, quote unquote, hasn't been tried, and yes, they really do say that, is because it hasn't been done in an industrial society yet. And so they believe America is in a better position to do it. Also, they believe Stalin effed everything up. These are Marxist-Leninists that explicitly denounce Stalin and Mao. And you can see them say that on their YouTube channel. They believe Stalin fucked everything up by not making the USSR a global enterprise. And so they also they're globalists. They're not globalists in the same way the WEF are. Those are different groups, but they want to do it they believe they're going to do it differently this time is essentially the answer.
In the early stages of the development of the what becomes the Bolshevik party, but the Russian Social Democratic Party, and going through its different sort of phases of splits, and its political trajectories that emerge from that. Lenin making the argument for the steps that need to be taken in order to develop a revolutionary party, comments on the rise of a trend within the socialist movement in Russia, but reflecting the international socialist movement as he was observing it at the time, a trend within the socialist movement of reformism and opportunism.
Reformism.
And in this specific case, arguing against the lowering of theoretical development and theoretical application, revolutionary theoretical development and its application in the class struggle in favor of an action or movement oriented orientation of the movement. So, in other words, Lenin begins to recognize reformist trends emerging by identifying that.
Okay, let's just pause there. He's talking about this idea of reformism versus revolution. There is a schism on the left. And this is why the Democratic Socialists of America are very, very different than the Denver Communists, which we're watching right now. There's a schism on the far left. Both reformers and revolutionaries want to achieve a post-capitalist society. They don't have the same idea about how to get there, though. So the Democratic Socialists of America is a leftist organization. They do want to achieve a post-capitalist world. They want to overthrow capitalism, but they want to work within the system by winning elections and running political candidates and getting elected to office, just like AOC and Bernie Sanders did. They want to make their change within the system, which the revolutionaries, the Denver Communists, people like them, feel is an untenable option. Because they don't believe that change will ever come from within the system. They think that change will only come by overthrowing the system. So the DSA are a problem and they're annoying, but the DSA is not actively trying to overthrow the federal government. They're running political candidates. Sometimes they win elections. You also have organizations like the Working Families Party. They run political candidates in Philadelphia and New Jersey specifically. They've absolutely won elections there. Those are reformist organizations. They want change, they want radical change, but they're doing it within the system. Their problem, they're not as big a problem as the revolutionaries. The revolutionaries do not believe in elections. They do not vote. They might form political parties. They might even occasionally run political candidates, but they don't actually think they're going to win. It's just to recruit more people to their organization and to get more people involved and stuff like that. Ultimately, the revolutionaries see no electoral way out of this. They think it's a way too slow of a process. They think that capitalism will literally kill everyone before they have a chance to overthrow the government if they do it through the current system. That's why they want to violently overthrow the government. They actually believe that between the options, it's the more humane option because it will get rid of capitalism quicker. So anyone who thinks that AOC and Bernie Sanders are the most far left things that you have to deal with, oh, no, no, no. No, no, no. In fact, these people believe that AOC and Bernie Sanders are traitors to the leftist cause because they believe they're too close to capitalism.
The struggle in and of itself is more important than the development of theory to guide that struggle. And so this is one of the first sort of arguments that he makes. And this is a quote that I think we've all heard, but he says, without a revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. And so he identifies three important elements in this stage of the development of the Russian socialist movement. The first one, he says, he says there are three important elements in the early party formation that we must focus on. And so in this first one, he says, we have to recognize and identify and combat other political trends that can divert from the revolutionary path within the socialist movement. And then secondly, he says we must vigorously combat national chauvinism, and that can be successful only if we understand and implement the experience of socialist and class struggles in other countries. And he says international forces have grown to the extent that there is a reserve of theoretical forces and political as well as revolutionary experience that is required to fulfill this task. So he's pointing out that we have to combat reformism and opportunism, but we also have to see that we're part of an international revolutionary movement, that we can learn from each other. And then the third thing he points out is, given the enormity of the task of revolution, the role of vanguard fighter can be fulfilled only by a party that is guided by the most advanced theory. And so revolutionary theory propels action if it is grounded in the practice of scientific socialism. And that,
what does that mean?
In shorthand, using theory, applying theory, theory itself is developed by learning from previous practice, combining theory and practice, assessing from.
Okay, so what he means when he's saying scientific socialism, so at the center of the left's activism is education. The left spends so much time studying the Russian Revolution. It's actually crazy. The left has entire weekend conferences where they're just talking about the Russian Revolution and they're reading everything Marx wrote, and they're reading everything Lenin wrote, and they're reading like a lot of Trotsky stuff too. There are a lot of Trotskyists in that group. So like they spend all their time studying this because they believe that if they just study as much as possible, they will find the theory to be able to execute the socialist revolution in America. They're very literally trying to recreate the Russian Revolution, guys. That's what they're trying to do. So for anyone that doesn't remember what happened during the Russian Revolution, the royal family got taken down to the basement and shot. And then the Bolsheviks took over Russia. And, it worked out great. There were gulags and stuff and a lot of starvation and death. And it worked out well for everyone. And then many years later, they are what they are today. Anyway, So that's what they spend all their time doing. So when he says scientific socialism, he means going back to the theoretical foundation and studying it and learning it and taking that and applying it today. Well, again, they believe that Stalin was the one that screwed that up. So they don't believe that Marx's theory was wrong. They don't believe that Lenin was wrong. They believe that Stalin screwed everything up. So yes, they believe that if Lenin had still continued on path, then it would have been implemented correctly. It was only not implemented correctly because Stalin screwed it up. How come Mao and China get no love? Because these aren't Maoists. I know a lot of people have heard that what we're dealing with in the United States is Maoism with American characteristics because James Lindsay is a fucking liar. But these people are not Maoists. If you go onto their YouTube channel, there are multiple presentations where they are explicitly denouncing Mao. Why are they explicitly denouncing Mao? Because Mao is in the tradition of Stalin, and these people reject Stalin. So any idea that people have about what we're experiencing in America as a Chinese cultural revolution, Maoism with American characteristics, is just wrong. It's a made-up narrative. There are Maoists in the United States, but they're not as prevalent as the Marxist-Leninists. I'm also, by the way, not saying there aren't similarities. There are, of course, parallels we can make, but it's just like to say that these people are pushing Maoism is just wrong. Let's see. It's going through the chat. Okay.
That lessons that can be distilled into new theory, incorporating successful applications of theory into practice, etc. And so that was the kind of introduction to into the first point about the importance of revolutionary theory. But then in the next part, Lenin describes he begins to talk about the different types of consciousness that become manifest in the class struggle. And so he describes the development and evolution of consciousness in the form of types of actions taken and how workers understand why they're taking that action. And so he describes the primary stage of class struggle or action taken by the working class, or the initial stage, is spontaneous. And that can be in the form of a riot, it can be in the form of a strike, or some.
The first action taken in the revolutionary struggle will be spontaneous. It could be a riot, it could be a strike. Does that sound like what we're dealing with right now? Again, the reason these people are doing this is they are forming a political organization so that when it happens, they're already ready to go.
And so he describes the primary stage of class struggle or action taken by the working class, or the initial stage, is spontaneous. And that can be in the form of a riot, it can be in the form of a strike, or some other kind of disruptive protest in which the working class is reacting to class exploitation and typically is reacting with the intention to achieve some kind of reform or some kind of change that will improve the conditions that are leading them to protest in the first place. And so he's identifying spontaneity in this sense as an initial form.
To be really clear, Haas is not a real communist or socialist, and the American Communist Party is a joke, and it's not relevant at all on the left. Haas can play pretend Stalin all he wants, but he is not a real communist, and he is not taken seriously by any real activist organizations on the left. And just because someone has a lot of Twitter followers doesn't actually mean anything. So no one make the mistake of thinking that that's all connected, because it's not. How can it be spontaneous when all these riots are engineered? The conservative bullshit narrative. Okay, Dan. Conservatives seem to believe that if a protest doesn't happen by some guy just deciding to go out onto a street corner and hold up a sign that he made on cardboard that morning and then have other people join him, that seems to be the only type of protest that you guys think is an organic protest. All protests need to be organized. The reason the left had 5 million people show out in the largest single-day protest in American history on Saturday, because the No Kings protest was not a small protest. It was an extremely large protest. The reason they did that is that they were planning for that for a month and a half. They were organizing. They were getting people excited. They were getting people involved in their local communities. They were getting people to sponsor events. They were making sure people had something to do. They were connecting people in social circles. They were doing phone banking. They were doing this, that, and the other. That doesn't mean the protest is fake. It means the left is significantly better at planning than the right is. The right doesn't organize. The right doesn't have events. The right doesn't rally. The right thinks that it's all just a leftist thing, so they just don't do it. And then they say, this is all fake because you had an organizing meeting. Things don't happen without organizing meetings. So yes, it would be spontaneous in that it would take an event that was already being planned and being organized to set it off. But we need to dispense with this idea that just because the left has planning meetings, which, by the way, responsible organizing should actually have planning meetings, the right just doesn't do it. We have to dispense with this notion that just because the left goes about things in a smart, strategic, organized way, that means it's fake and not real. It is real. They're just being much smarter about it than you guys. So, yes, can we please refrain from debunking, guys? We don't debunk. We don't debunk when we're watching the left. You win no points from me for debunking. Yes, protests are the definition of an event. That's very true. Hey, Suzanne, thanks for the super chat. These are not the people Twitter makes fun of. Yeah, true. Very true.
He calls an embryonic form of consciousness. And he distinguishes this, and I'm going to build on this, from what he calls social democratic consciousness, but what I'll call revolutionary socialist consciousness here, which is instead of being an action geared towards reform, it's an action consciously geared towards revolution.
See, there's the difference. Reform versus
so
revolution.
Lenin distinguishes between embryonic class consciousness, what he refers to as trade union consciousness. This can also be understood as basic
trade union consciousness. You don't say. Trade union consciousness. It's almost like all unions are socialist.
Class consciousness, but the idea, a stage of consciousness in which workers begin to understand that they're part of a class, that they're opposed to the class that owns the means of production, that they need unionization, they need a collective, a system to counter the power of the bosses, and ultimately through this kind of power they can achieve reform.
Okay, he just laid out why all unions are socialists, and I just want to make sure people understand this. One of the primary goals of the far left is they want to awaken class consciousness, or what they also might call critical consciousness, among the population. Class consciousness is when someone wakes up to the notion, or red pills, if you will, to the notion that there is a class system. There are the people who own property and the people who don't own property, or the people who have stuff and the people who don't have stuff, or the bosses and the workers, or the bourgeois, the proletariat, or the oppressor, the oppressed. It's all the same thing. There are people who have more access to money and resources than other people. When you understand that the different classes exist and that you are usually in the oppressed class, that means you have awoken class consciousness. This is the first thing they need to do in order to have their revolution. They want to awaken as many people as possible to the idea that they are in an oppressed class, and the thing that oppresses them is capitalism. And so that's what they want to try to create right now, is waking people up to that. In this, they are explicitly talking about using the unions to organize against the bosses, the proletariat, in order to gain power. That is still happening now. How many unions have we seen in these leftist protests? The unions have been front and center. The teachers' unions, the SEIU, the AFL-CIO, the United Auto Workers, the California the higher ed people that are protesting at colleges all over the state of California. We have seen union after union after union after union after union involved in this because they explicitly use the unions to recruit and radicalize more people to the left. That's not to say that everyone in a union is a socialist. Some people have to be in unions because of their job. But all unions as a system are fundamentally socialist. Listen to this again.
An action consciously geared towards revolution. So Lenin distinguishes between embryonic class consciousness, what he refers to as trade union consciousness. This can also be understood as basic class consciousness. But the idea, a stage of consciousness in which workers begin to understand that they're part of a class, that they're opposed to the class that owns the means of production, that they need unionization, they need a collective, a system to counter the power of the bosses, and ultimately through this.
Hang on. I've just seen the most stupid comment in my chat that I've seen in a while. You're new here, so I'm going to do you a big favor and point out why this is retarded. Okay. I think the left is being deliberately vague by not making a large push for finding the new face of the left. They are refusing to give the right a target. Bro. The left does not even take the right into consideration when they're making decisions because they think the right is not the primary obstacle that they have. They are not playing the same game you are. It is not their. Do you want a target? Do you want to know what the left's target is, bro? Do you want to know what the left's target is? Hang on. I'll show you. This is a sticker that I got from Antifa on Saturday. Destroy capitalism before it destroys the planet. Capitalism is the target. Anti-capitalism is the face. The left is extraordinarily clear about who their main enemy is. The left is extraordinarily clear about what they're trying to do. They want to destroy capitalism. This is not about running political candidates. It's not about AOC. It's not about a presidential election. They don't give a flying fuck. They want to destroy capitalism. That is what they're trying to do. And anyone that doesn't understand that, you need to stick around and listen. Because this isn't about your presidential bullshit. They don't care about that.
Kind of power they can achieve reform. Again, this is a stage that he identifies as something that is, instinctive or at least an initial form of consciousness, counterposing this to something distinct, the revolutionary socialist consciousness, which is an understanding that we're not, a level of consciousness in which we understand that we're fighting against the system, that is represented by a boss or by the owners of the means of production, but it's a larger system.
They're fighting against a system that is represented by the boss. What do you think that system is? We are fighting against the system that's represented by the boss or the bourgeois, but is a much larger system. What do you guys think he's talking about there?
That we're fighting against the system, that is represented by a boss or by the owners of the means of production, but it's a larger system that is generating the exploitation and oppression that the workers are experiencing, and therefore fighting against this system, understanding that system and understanding that we need to fight it as a system is, this revolutionary socialist consciousness, or what he calls social democratic consciousness.
So the understanding that you are fighting capitalism as a system is that is what revolutionary consciousness is. Exactly. Yes. This is not about working within the system. This is about overthrowing the system. Yes. See, I love this. I love it when I tell someone off on stream and then they come back and they totally get what I'm saying, Congratulations, bro. You passed the hazing ritual. If people don't own their homes, then it will be the state or hedge funds. Bro, hedge funds are not going to exist. Hedge funds do not exist in the socialist utopia. Banks don't exist in the socialist utopia. Money doesn't exist in the socialist utopia. They want to get rid of all money. I have them on video saying this. They are teaching children in schools how to build future societies without money. I've documented this. I documented that at UCLA School of Education like 2 years ago. So ain't going to be no hedge funds. Also, there's not going to be the state as you know it because you're thinking of the capitalist state, and that's what they want to overthrow. The property will belong to the collective. It will be under the caretakership of like a local council or something like that. But ain't going to be owned by no hedge funds because ain't no hedge funds going to exist.
I'm just using these terms interchangeably because I know, we know today social democratic means something different, but at this time it was this was meant to be a forerunner to revolutionary socialism or communism. And so he says, as I've already stated, the spontaneous element of working class struggle is consciousness in its embryonic form. In spontaneous struggle, workers.
Oh, let's talk about retards on the internet who think that YouTube views are all that matters. Let's talk about internet-obsessed retards who look at a video and say, that'll never happen. Do you know that I have found videos on the internet with a couple dozen views that outline explicitly how they're indoctrinating kids in public schools? Do those videos not matter because they only have a couple dozen views when they are teachers on video talking explicitly about how they're indoctrinating your kids in public schools? I think those videos matter quite a lot. You want to know why? They're not putting these videos on the internet to show them to people outside of their group. They are putting these videos on the internet because these are recordings of their private meetings. These meetings happen every single week in towns all over the country, organized on a local level where people are actually showing up and communicating with each other in person. They're not putting it out to be internet celebrities, you fucking retard. They're putting it out because it's an archive of their content that they can use to educate people later. The left just staged the largest single-day protest in United States history. And your response is, they only got a couple hundred views on YouTube. Oh no, little princess doesn't like being educated. Bro, I'm very, very sorry. I'm very sorry. This is a smart people channel. This is not a retard channel. And I have 2 rules in my chat. Don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult anyone else in the chat. And no whining. Guess what? You've already broken both. And you've just shown us that you're not smart enough to be here. So now you're permanently banned. Goodbye. Hey, thanks, Donnie girl. We haven't had too many low IQs today. We've only had like one person get banned today. I think this is great. Lots of people showing up wanting to learn. Can't ask for anything else.
Reach trade union consciousness in the sense that they are taking action against class oppression as an economic issue, but not against the system that compels oppression. Trade union struggle alone does not lead to socialist consciousness. Socialist consciousness is not spontaneously driven or incrementally involved, but is comprehensively developed as a conscious understanding of the need for the working class to act directly against the system through revolutionary action. For spontaneous struggle, trade union struggle to develop.
Relatively new here. Do you have any recordings of Western New York? I mean, I don't know, T. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe. There are certainly revolutionary socialist groups in New York. What I would say is maybe look around in your neck of the woods, and if you see anything, send it to us and we'll watch it. But make sure you learn their language before you do any of this, because it's going to be more useful to you if you learn their language.
Develop into revolutionary political consciousness, he says there must be a second element. The revolutionary vanguard element or revolutionary socialist party. and he says, socialism and the class struggle arise side by side and not one out of the other. Each arises under different conditions. The revolutionary vanguard is the converged element of the working class that has attained socialist consciousness, is the most militant, and vies for class leadership against the reformist and counter-revolutionary elements inside the working class.
Ooh.
And so while Lenin says the working class spontaneously gravitates towards socialism, nevertheless, most widespread and continuously and diversely revived bourgeois ideology spontaneously imposes itself upon the working class to a still greater degree. End quote. This is where we get the conception of uneven or mixed or contradictory consciousness.
Yeah. So Diane says, I see that some pundits out there are saying No Kings was a flop. Guys, listen, for anyone that's new, I understand that it's hard sometimes to know which commentators to listen to and which commentators are lying to you, but just pay attention when stuff like this happens. I'm not shooting the messenger, Diane. Don't worry. You're fine. You're fine. Just pay attention when stuff like this happens. Pay attention to what commentators are saying that the No Kings protest was a flop, because I promise you, those commentators were handed a set of talking points and they get paid to say those talking points. And just know that every single person you see saying the No Kings protest was a flop, either they're willfully ignorant and you shouldn't be listening to them if they're going to maintain willful ignorance, or they are being paid to tell you that narrative, and you shouldn't listen to those people either. And I understand this might be like, I just told you Santa Claus isn't real or something like that, but a lot of people on this channel have had to go through the process of accepting that commentators and pundits that they trusted to inform them are lying to them for money. This is why we only do primary source evidence on this channel. You never have to take my word for it. I will show you the video. You can decide for yourself. But what I will tell you is that you will end up being confused if you continue to listen to people who are lying to you, and it won't help you to learn this content at all. And I just know that because I've seen this happen over and over and again on my channel. So you're going to learn that everyone is fake and gay. Everyone sucks except us. But whatever, nothing we can do about it.
It's within the working class movement, which by itself cannot transcend or negate its own limitations without another organized force, i.e. the role of revolutionaries and the Revolutionary Party in the struggle, acting upon it. And so again, Lenin, quote, the task of social democracy is to imbue the proletariat, literally saturate the proletariat with the consciousness of its position and the consciousness of its task. Revolutionary theory and its application and practice, therefore, are the necessary ingredients that combine to advance revolutionary shifts in the class struggle. And so I'm repeating myself a little bit because Lenin did that a lot, and I'm only doing it because Lenin did that a lot. Therefore, for spontaneous or trade union struggle to develop towards revolutionary struggle, class struggle must be conjoined with revolutionary theory, practice, and the cohesion of a revolutionary vanguard party within the working class. Again, the most conscious and determined militant and revolutionary elements working together. The development of this trajectory increases political consciousness or socialist consciousness within the working class as a whole. Meaning the revolutionary working class vanguard party can act consciously toward its revolutionary objectives in the context of the class struggle.
To overthrow the government.
So Lenin says working class people, in another later essay, he says working class people are instinctively socialist. But there is a need for the revolutionary, there is a need for a revolution.
Certainly.
Okay, take two. And so Lenin specifically comments on the need.
If they think it's so great, why aren't they more open about themselves and their goals? Lady, within the first 5 minutes of this presentation, he was telling you they want to overthrow the federal government. What more do you want exactly? This is the Denver Communists in a Denver Communist meeting in the first 5 minutes of the presentation telling you they want to overthrow the government. Like, the left is incredibly upfront about what they want to do. The problem is you need to know where to look and you need to listen to what they're saying. They're not putting these presentations out on the internet for conservatives or right-leaning people. They are putting this stuff out on the internet to communicate with each other. The thing is, I've been doing this for a long ass time and I know where their content is. I know how they're communicating with each other, which is why we're watching the Denver Communists today when no one else on the internet is watching this stuff, because people on the right don't think to look for it. So it's not as though they're not being open about themselves and their goals. They're being incredibly open about it. They're putting it publicly on the internet. They're saying, watch our content, but no one does except for us. So, yes, they would. This is literally how they talk to each other in their private spaces. I've had communists on this channel. I had the Revolutionary Communists of America come on this channel. They were incredibly open about their ideas. I've had Noah from Midwestern Marx on the channel. He's incredibly open about his ideas. The thing is, people don't talk to them about their ideas.
For that organized revolutionary organization or party to bring socialist ideas from the outside into the class struggle. Now, this is somewhat of a controversial point, but what he's arguing is not from outside, meaning that working class people can't be socialist or achieve at some level socialist consciousness, but he means outside the confines of the immediate economic struggle. And so that revolutionary socialist theory and practice is brought into the class struggle to counter bourgeois ideology and its limits, to direct action and understanding of the oppressive ruling class and the capitalist system as the source of all exploitation and oppression, and thereby create
the capitalist system is the source of all exploitation and oppression. Again, please.
Capitalist to direct action and understanding of the oppressive ruling class and the capitalist system as the source of all exploitation and oppression.
They literally believe
Oppressive ruling class and the capitalist system as the source of all exploitation.
The capitalist system is the source of all exploitation. They believe that capitalism, both as an economic model and as a cultural model, creates all problems. So actually, hang on. I have a helpful tool. For people who miss Socialism Saturday. Oh, no, that's not what I want. No, come back. This one. This is a newspaper that I got in Boston over the weekend. This is from a group called Socialist Alternative. This is the front page of their newspaper. No Trump, no transphobia, no racism, fight capitalism. They believe that capitalism created Trump, which I think should be obvious. They believe capitalism created transphobia. They believe capitalism created racism. Oh no. They believe capitalism created the climate crisis. They believe capitalism will kill us all via the climate crisis. They believe capitalism created the patriarchy. Capitalism created all problems. And so they're telling us, so when you think of intersectionality, this idea that people have multiple oppression points. They could be oppressed because of their race or their gender or their sexuality or their disability status or whether or not they're Christian or this or that or the other. You guys know what intersectionality means. The easiest way to think of intersectionality is all of the ways in which you are oppressed by capitalism. So some people are more oppressed by capitalism than other people. And that's why intersectionality was created as a model to try to illustrate that. Okay. So they believe capitalism created all problems. Capitalism is always the epicenter of the problem. And no, the Gnostic sex cult thing was completely wrong and ridiculous and stupid, and it never was real. And James Lindsay made it up. And no, it was never real. It's always been about capitalism. So we'll talk a lot about that.
And oppression, and thereby create the conditions through which class consciousness can be elevated to revolutionary consciousness. And this part might sound a little complex, but the scale of the struggle, the evolution of experience of the working class in struggle, and in relation to the size and influence of a coherent revolutionary vanguard can determine the scale of action,
thanks, Jane.
its political character, and the possibility for it to pass from being limited to reformist aims or to advance towards revolutionary ones. Another
limited reformist aims or advance to revolutionary ones. Again, this is the idea of reformist versus revolutionary.
Towards the shift towards revolutionary consciousness in the working class, depending on these factors, can either stay stagnant, can develop incrementally, or only affect small numbers, or can shift very quickly and on a large scale based on the configuration of circumstances. Most importantly, the scale of the crisis, the size, the integration and influence of revolutionaries within that working class vanguard, and the specific twists and turns of the class struggle and how it plays out in that context. But he also observes two problems. One is that without the experience of seeing how class struggle spontaneity itself does not automatically lead to socialist consciousness and advancement in the struggle beyond demands for reform, and how the allure of spontaneous mass action and its progression can lead socialists to a type of reformism, towards a path of reformism that he refers to specifically as economism. This is where socialists inflate trade union struggle as a means to educate workers towards revolutionary consciousness, but which in fact downplays the importance of revolutionary theory and practice, and therefore leads to a gradual abandonment of the very concept of the need for a revolutionary vanguard party and the need for revolution itself. This practice of organized socialist economism is seen in many groups on the left, and I would, it's by far the dominant strain within the socialist left. I would argue, most.
Well, I guess it's just not happening then. I guess the fact that they're organizing in these meetings, that they're having these meetings, doing these presentations to each other in which they're interacting with each other and having intense discussion, I guess that's just not happening because there aren't comments on YouTube. Are you serious? Can you guys please insert your brain? Like, honestly. You really think that YouTube comments are the end-all be-all? Because I'll tell you what, I have a lot of videos on this channel that don't really have many YouTube comments, and yet it doesn't mean that it's not stuff that it's important, or it doesn't mean it's not stuff that's happening. The reality is, as I have previously explained and I'll explain again, the Denver communists do not organize via YouTube. The Denver communists do not communicate via YouTube. The reason these videos are on YouTube is this is an educational archive of the content that they're creating that they can use later, but they also put these videos in other places that are more accessible to their members. The way they organize is in person. The way they communicate with each other is in person. It's not in YouTube comments. The purpose of these videos is not the same as a YouTube content creator. This is not, guys, this is not fucking internet content. This is not a performance. This is not an influencer. This is not some fucking moron like Hassan Piker or Vosh trying to get you guys to go to their stream and be in their chat and send them money, This is not what this is. This is a serious group of revolutionaries who are simply using YouTube as an archive. Therefore, whatever's going on their YouTube channel, it doesn't make a fucking difference because they're not trying to be internet celebrities. They are trying to organize in Denver, which they are highly successful at doing.
Obviously the DSA, but I would argue other groups from Solidarity to Tempest, practice forms of this kind of socialist economism, which uplifts the class struggle and the importance of class struggle, but essentially rejects, downplays, or even abandons the revolution.
Do you know this is okay? After we finish this presentation, we're doing a new rule for the next presentation that the comments in the chat are going to relate to the presentation. I'm going to tell Brian, I'm going to explain to you why you believe the impact of the 2020 protest was greater than the No Kings protest. Are you ready? Are you ready? Here is why you believe that the No Kings protest wasn't as impactful as the BLM riots in 2020. Number one, the No Kings protest was one day. The BLM riots lasted for effing months. Now, make no mistake, we're going to have bullshit going on all summer. So maybe you can report back into me at the end of the summer whether or not you really think it was actually that insignificant, because we're walking into a whole summer that we're at the beginning stages of this bullshit, Brian. We're not at the end stages. But the other reason that you don't think it was as impactful is because conservative media are lying to you and they are not covering it. So you literally don't have access to the information, because I promise you, the only people who think that this wasn't impactful are people watching conservative media, because you are watching influencers who lie to you. So maybe stop doing that.
Revolutionary Vanguard Party, and therefore revolution as a task. And so, concluding this part, and I'm almost done. Lenin, to quote Lenin, very, again, directly in this case, he didn't mince words a lot. Hence, our task, the task of revolutionary socialists, is to combat spontaneity, to divert the working class movement from this spontaneous trade unionist striving to come under the wing of the bourgeoisie, and instead to bring it under the wing of revolutionary socialism. The last part I'm going to talk about, and this will be quick, I know I'm going on a little bit long here, is about the revolutionary newspaper. And I really pushed Jason to let me include this in here. Just kidding. But the role of the paper, I think, is really important, and so did Lenin. So let's hear from Lenin. And so in chapter 5B, can a newspaper be a revolutionary? Can be a collective organizer, and what type of organization to require? He focuses on debates within the Russian socialist movement on the question of the revolutionary paper, and he summarizes a debate that's taking place between groups that emphasize the need for local, very specific papers geared towards local struggle versus a national paper, and he articulates some of the points of view of those arguing for local first, national later, and he argues for national first as a means to build the locals. He says the whole point. He says. And it's to summarize this, he says the whole point is that there's no other way of training strong local political organizations except through the medium of an all-Russian newspaper. He says local work would become far richer and more varied than it is now. A national revolutionary paper could help overcome fragmentation and create a unified revolutionary party. The newspaper would provide a common platform for discussion, solidify ideological unity, and help connect disparate elements of the movement across the country. And then this is a quote: the publication of an all-Russian political newspaper must be the main line by adhering to which we could unswervingly develop deeper and expand this organization, i.e. a revolutionary organization always prepared to support every protest and every outbreak. A newspaper is not only a collective propagandist and a collective agitator, but also a collective organizer. In this respect,
a newspaper, I love this. Hang on, listen to this.
Propagandist in every outbreak. A newspaper is not only a collective propagandist and a collective agitator, but also a collective organizer. In this respect, it can be compared to the scaffolding erected.
A newspaper is a collective activist and organizer. They do things in the real world, guys. They produce newspapers. They produce magazines. They produce pamphlets. Why do you think... Hang on. Where's my bag? Why do you think I have a bag full of zines? I have a bag full of this shit. Things they produce in the real world. And this one happens to be about DIYing hormones, and that should be a new nightmare for everyone that I pulled out randomly out of my bag. They produce real world stuff. They do, this is old school activism. But think about this though. In a day when everything is digital, doesn't old school activism, handing something to someone on a street corner, handing someone a flyer, handing someone a pamphlet, doesn't that actually make more sense than trying to do this stuff online? No one reads stuff online. No one is going to read a long like pamphlet online, but they'll read it if you hand it to them in person because it's easier to read that way. So that's how they organize. They don't just do stuff on Twitter. They do stuff in the real world.
Around a building and construction. He has this whole bricklayer analogy. It marks the contours of the structure, the scaffolding does, and facilitates communication between the builders, permitting them to distribute the work and to view the common results achieved by their organized labor. Lenin also emphasized the importance of giving workers the widest opportunity to write for our paper, sharing their experiences and reports from the field. This would allow the party to generalize these experiences, uncover deeper processes of the class struggle, and use them to guide for future action.
All right, that's the end of that presentation. What happens in their meetings, guys, is after they do the presentation, they go into a discussion and a Q&A, but they don't record the discussion and Q&A, and they edit that part out later, so unfortunately we don't get to see it. But when the Q&A is almost universally the best part of any meeting because it tells you what they really think. All right, that was presentation number 1. We're moving on to our second presentation from the Denver Communists. Let me make sure the sound's set up. This presentation was about 2 weeks ago, so it's relatively new. And it's called Propaganda, Agitation, and Our Task. So this is what they're gonna tell you what they want to do. Do they actually let a lot of people attending their in-person meetings? Well, the last time I checked, it was a publicly available link, but I also recorded them and put that on the internet last time I checked. So I don't know, maybe they've taken the public link down. But yeah, they will let people attend their meetings. Very new here and younger, dealing with classmates. That you're right, Karlyn. Simp for cucks like Hassan. Question: what do real communists think of these Twitch guys? Real communists think that the Twitch guys are a joke. This is why I told off that Haas guy that came in here earlier. Because, like, if you ask, I've had so many people online come up to me and it's like, the American Communist Party, you follow them? And I'm like, no, I don't follow them at all. The reason I don't follow them at all is because real leftist activists don't take them seriously at all. They don't talk to them. They don't interact with them. They're not involved in their social circles. They don't go to their events. Like, they're not involved at all. The real leftists, real communists do not believe Hassan Piker is a communist. Real communists do not believe that Vosh is a communist. So we don't even pay attention to these people. It's all fake. You guys have got to separate influencers and entertainers from the real far left. When I say we watch the real far left, I mean we watch the people who are self-professed communist and socialist activists going to communist and socialist events, actually pushing communist and socialist ideology in the real world. They're writing books about it. They're hosting events about it. They have meetings about it. They do protests about it. They're doing things to actually organize. These are not entertainers. These are activists. These are the real ones. No, they're not even useful idiots for them. What usefulness is Hassan Piker and Vosh doing for communists? No, explicitly no. I am very sorry to break your hearts. No. All right, let's dig into this presentation. It's about 20 minutes long, and we'll see how long that takes us to watch it.
And the one that follows next week is for Firebrand and Socialist Horizon to clarify and discuss organizing strategy. In particular, the goal is to get to the bottom of issues we debated in fits and starts 3 years ago. It is unclear where or whether we disagree because we never really explored the matter thoroughly enough or communicated clearly enough. So this is an attempt to work to resolve that communication. So I want to suggest that.
Yeah, no, hang on. You're not going to do this shit in my chat. So don't do this. I'm going to put you in a timeout. Do not continue spamming my chat with bullshit just to get attention. It's distracting for everyone. It's not allowed here. How many useful idiots were at the protest you attended? A lot. Well, when I say useful idiot, I mean, it's going to be more like the do-gooders, honestly. So yeah, there were definitely quite a bit, but not at the queer Marxist thing. The queer Marxist thing were activists. Let's see. Can I explain why Antifa and these people are not LARPers? I watched Antifa people straight up fighting riot cops in LA, which is not LARPing. I mean, you just explained it. You guys think Antifa are LARPers? Antifa is setting fires to things. They're creating bombs. I have an entire propaganda archive of them talking about their direct action. Like, if that's LARPing, then what do you consider to be real life? Because they're trying to provoke violent riots. They're beating the shit out of people. They beat up multiple independent journalists. They're setting fire to things. They're causing massive chaos. How do you define real if you define Antifa as LARPing? That makes no sense. Why should we be more afraid of a tiny minority of extremist communists than millions of moderate socialist Democrats who want to expand the state and erode our freedoms? How naive of you, Kevin. How naive of you to believe that this is a teeny tiny little minority of extremist communists. How utterly naive of you, Kevin. If you stick around and you learn the language that they use, you are going to start seeing these people everywhere. If you think that this is a teeny tiny insignificant minority, then come back and learn the language and then get back to me in a couple months and tell me what you think, because that is an extremely naive position. I understand that it's scary seeing this stuff, guys. I really do. I understand for new people, it might be scary to actually see it in person, but coping by saying this is a teeny tiny little minority, it's just a cope. There's a significant amount of these people. They have a significant decentralized organization that they have been building over the course of decades. Saturday was the largest single-day protest in American history. This is not an insignificant... I'm not saying everyone protesting on Saturday was a revolutionary communist, but a lot of them were. And so if you think that this is an insignificant group of people, well, then I have to say that conservatives are much more insignificant, because conservatives don't do half the shit these people do.
Some differences, our differences between Firebrand and Socialist Horizon comrades came up that involve a tension between two Leninist truisms. One, without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. And two, consciousness changes through struggle. So these are Leninist truisms and true ones, I would say. I think that we agree on that. And it's just a matter of kind of where we put our emphasis. The tension between those two, I think, is echoed between the tension, or echoed by, or echoed in the tension between theory and practice, between teaching and learning, between vanguardism and tailism, between propaganda and agitation. We have no use for tailism, obviously, but for the rest of this list, we need both, and we just need to get the balance right for our objective and subjective conditions. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Much of the work of being a revolutionary.
Can we please shame Matthew in the chat? Can we please shame Matthew in the chat? For new people, There is nothing that I hate more than when a conservative who doesn't know shit about shit comes into my chat and goes, "We have jobs. We're the only people with jobs. Moi jobs. No one else has jobs but us. The reason we can't do anything is because we have jobs. No one else has jobs. We're the only one with jobs." It is the most annoying, bullshit, lazy excuse in the history of the fucking internet. Not only does the left have jobs, often the left owns the public schools. Do you think the left owns the public schools if they don't have jobs? The left owns the colleges and universities. Do you think the left owns the colleges and universities if they don't have jobs? The left owns the unions. All unions. All unions are run by leftists. Do you think that that would be possible if they didn't have jobs? But no, conservatives, no. You are the only people in the world with jobs. We understand. We understand that you're fucking lazy and you don't want to get off your couch to go protest on a weekend and you're too cowardly to wear a MAGA hat and you spent years hiding from people in your workplace pretending you didn't vote for Donald Trump because you were so afraid that if people in your workplace found out that you voted for Donald Trump, you would be fired, which is kind of ironic because it means that you worked for a leftist. If you were ever afraid of being fired in your workplace, if your employer found out that you supported Trump, that means you literally worked for a fucking leftist, which means not only did that leftist have a job, that leftist actually outranked you. So can we please stop? Can we please put this cope aside? And I would like nothing more than to never hear moi jobs again.
Is to learn from our fellow workers and oppressed people, both around us and flung across space and time. But we also have something special to offer to movements against exploitation and oppression, the Marxist tool set for understanding and changing the world. And we should offer that up with confidence and conviction. Because we accept those truisms, and on the necessity of theory and struggle, we want to meet people coming into motion, entering into struggle, trying to grapple with changing the world or their conditions. And so we do that by relating to protests and picket lines with the goal of keeping people in motion and directing that motion toward class struggle. So tonight, we read, and I'm mostly going to just review and comment on the main reading for tonight, the Mick Armstrong. And I think Armstrong makes a clear articulation of a familiar Leninist organizing strategy that his articulation has guided Socialist Alternative Australia in their last, I'm not sure how long, 10, 15 years maybe. So Armstrong starts off by saying that in this section of the reading that there are two preconditions for building a mass revolutionary workers' party. One is objective conditions that are outside of our control, and that's like a decisive radicalization across society, across a significant layer of workers that makes them receptive to socialist ideas. And two, subjective conditions, things that depend on what we do, and that subjective condition is a cohered, sizable body of committed revolutionaries, a cadre, and that is capable.
Hang on. This is a great question. Perfect tangent. Do you see the damage that's been done to the conservative mind by denying the religious act? Oh, wait, this is actually a horrible question. Communism is not a religion. Communism believes that all religion will die out under communism. They don't hate religion. They're not trying to replace religion. They just believe that religion is a cope, and that it will die out once they overthrow capitalism because they won't need to cope with it anymore. Can you break down it a bit for me? It really seems objective that they have lost. Yeah, Brian, I can break it down for you. They're not trying to win elections. I'm also saying they never lost power. The left is objectively more powerful than ever. Do you want to know why? Because they've controlled the public schools for the last decade with absolutely no pushback from conservatives. So you know how conservatives always like to say, if they don't vote for the left when they're young, they have no heart. If they don't vote for the right when they're old, they have no brain. Well, guess what? That's not happening this time. The current generation of people have been indoctrinated into leftist ideology since they were 5 years old. That has never happened before in public schools. So you have an entire generation of kids that are now graduating from high school and college, that are going out into the world, that have no other education other than fully indoctrinated leftism. They're not waking up this time. The problem with conservatives, and why conservatives always ask questions like this, is conservatives are convinced that the only way to make change in the world is by winning an election. Political power is incredibly weak power. Political power is one of the weakest forms of power that you can have. So you can literally win an election, as Donald Trump did. Donald Trump won an election. One of the things that Donald Trump promised us he was going to do was mass deportations. Has Trump actually done mass deportations? Let me know in the chat. Trump promised us if he won an election, item number 1, mass deportations. Trump not only won an election, they won the House and they won the Senate. Have we gotten our mass deportations? No, we haven't. Why? Because political power doesn't really matter. It matters maybe in the short term. It matters maybe in that, it's going to be marginally better under Trump than it would have been under Kamala Harris. But ultimately, leftists are not playing the electoral game. These people explicitly denounce electoral politics. They don't participate in elections. They're trying to overthrow the government. And so they're building power in a completely different way. And it's a way that conservatives are almost completely blind to, which is why these people have been allowed to operate almost completely unopposed for decades. So they're not playing the same game that you are. If you believe elections are the only way to get power, they are not doing the same thing. And that's why they're ultimately going to win, because political power is extremely easy to lose, and the right will probably lose it in the midterm elections. It'll probably go back to the Democrats. And guess what? These people, the communists that we're watching, hate the Democrats just as much as they hate the Republicans, by the way. These are not Democrats. These are communists. So even if the Democrats win in the midterms and they take over the House and they take over the Senate, these people are still going to keep doing exactly what they're doing because they're working outside of the system.
Capable of intervening in labor and social movements to advance struggle and to win their fellow fighters to revolutionary socialism. And then Armstrong goes on to say there are 3 types or stages of organization in the Marxist tradition: discussion circles, propaganda groups, and parties. Each is larger and more capable of leading struggle than the one that precedes it. Propaganda groups are sort of the thing in question, right? We know we're not a party. We're not just a discussion circle. Propaganda groups are oriented on ideological clarification, but have like a discussion circle, but they have a broader range of activity. And then from the other reading, we heard from Plekhanov in defining propaganda and agitation. Plekhanov said, a propagandist presents many ideas to few people, and an agitator presents a few ideas to many people. So back to the Armstrong. Armstrong talks about propaganda and agitation, or he breaks down propaganda into different types. He says there's general or abstract propaganda, and then there's concrete or agitational propaganda. And so the general and abstract is like broad ideas about everything, meant to offer a wide understanding of society and capitalism.
Capitalism.
And then concrete or agitational propaganda.
What kind of work are you allowed to do in the communist society? You are allowed to do the job they assign you based on what they decide to produce. So they will get rid of all private businesses in a communist society, but there's still going to be the need for like the functioning of basic society. So they're going to need people to like run the schools because they will control the schools. You will not be allowed to homeschool your kids. So they're going to need people to run the schools. They're going to need people to run the kitchen because they will control the food supply. You will not be able to get access to food outside of the food supply. They're going to need people to like run the energy grid and all that stuff because they will control the energy grid and they will decide who gets energy and who gets gas. They're going to need people to like probably control like different transportation related things or different like healthcare. Healthcare is another thing. Universal healthcare, you're going to get access to all the universal healthcare you guys have ever wanted, but you're not going to have any private doctors or private insurance or things like that. It's all going to be universal healthcare. They're going to need people to administer that. Basically you're going to do whatever job they tell you to do, and you're not really going to have a choice in it, because if you don't go and do the job they tell you to do, then you don't get access to food because they control the food supply. Yeah, Soylent Green. Yep.
Is specific ideas about a specific thing, and is accompanied by a call to action. And Armstrong says, and obviously we agree.
Hang on, we got a super chat from Richard. Thank you, Richard, for the super chat. Oh, why is my computer slow all of a sudden? Oh my God, I need to get a new computer so bad. It seems to me that white liberal women are responsible for the left's political power. Well, Richard, thank you for the money. I do appreciate the money. Liberals and communists are not the same thing. So we are not watching liberals right now. We are watching people that hate liberals. And so I don't know what white liberal women have to do with any of this. You're also watching a white man talk right now. Also, the previous presentation was given by a white man. And there are many, 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 many men involved in socialism and communism. So I appreciate the money. I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with the perspective, though.
Like we need both. But when we're lacking when we're small and lacking in influence, we can barely demonstrate our politics in action. We must recruit more on the basis of ideas, so more on propaganda than agitation. And I want to say here, this is really crucial. Apparently, a socialist alternative uses the term interventionist propaganda group. So they don't.
Hang on. This is an important question. Are communists on board with depopulation? A very, 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 very tiny percent of them talk about depopulation. The way you know what communists care about is they write books about everything. There are tons of socialist book publishers, and we watch a lot of the content of the socialist book publishers. How you know what is on the communist agenda is what are they writing books about? What are they publishing books about? What are they going on speaking tours about with regards to their books? I've only ever seen one book, like one singular one, about depopulation on the radical revolutionary far left. And so while there is that one book and there is like one guy that talks about it a lot, it is not something that I see across leftist groups. I've never seen the Denver Communists talk about depopulation. I've never seen the Tempest Collective talk about depopulation. I've been undercover at multiple socialist events and I've never heard them talk about depopulation. And so I think this is more of a Bill Gates thing than it is a radical revolutionary socialist thing. And so it's there. I'm not going to lie and say it's not there because there is one single book, but it's like, you got to understand, like, the left gets off on writing books. They write books about everything. So the fact that there's like only one book about depopulation, it's kind of like just not a topic that's interesting to them, honestly.
Just say propaganda group. They've tacked on an adjective to modify, to explicitly address a pitfall of overemphasizing propaganda, which is abstaining from struggle. So they're trying to address that. So, you know, saying interventionist propaganda group is sort of like saying agitational propaganda group. So, you know, we're not trying to divorce the two and say, you know, but we're, you know, yeah, anyway. All right. So Armstrong says many small revolutionary groups come to grief by...
No, this is not correct. This is not correct. If there's for abortion, they're supporting depopulation? No. The reason the left is supporting abortion is because abortion liberates women from the gender binary by freeing them from their responsibilities related to reproductive labor. It has nothing to do with depopulation. And again, guys, remember, your definitions don't matter. So it doesn't matter, John, what you think the goal of abortion is. Doesn't fucking matter. We are talking about what the left believes. The reason the left supports abortion is because they believe it liberates women from the gender binary or the patriarchy and their otherwise obligation to do the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers in the home. Abortion is an attack on the gender binary and it is an attack on the nuclear family. That's what it is.
Overestimating their capabilities and exaggerating their ability to influence struggle. They remain propaganda groups whether or not they think they are activist groups and are less effective for not recognizing what they are. We are primarily arguing our ideas by holding public meetings, by organizing study groups, by tabling, distributing flyers, selling books, writing articles, spreading propaganda on social media, and talking to people. We're doing that more than we're...
Hang on. They're telling you how they're organizing and what they're doing. Listen to this.
So Armstrong says many small revolutionary groups come to grief by overestimating their capabilities and exaggerating their ability to influence struggle. They remain propaganda...
No. This has nothing to do with transhumanism. Transhumanism is a completely separate thing. Listen to what is being said, please.
Revolutionary groups come to grief by overestimating their capabilities and exaggerating their ability to influence struggle. They remain propaganda groups whether or not they think they are activist groups and are less effective for not recognizing what they are. We are primarily arguing our ideas by holding public meetings, by organizing study groups, by tabling, distributing flyers, selling books, writing articles, spreading propaganda on social media, and talking to people. We're doing that more than we're able to agitate for mass action or run for office. Not that that's on the table, but...
Not that that's on the table. They're not running for office.
We participate in social movements and labor struggles to argue for how they can win, to argue for the need for mass action, to argue ideas, to try to win people radicalized by struggle to a socialist standpoint.
So what are they doing? Sorry, hang on. Oh gosh, hang on. Oh my gosh, I just like swallowed down the wrong pipe. My bad, I didn't mean to cough into the microphone. Okay. What did he just talk about? He just talked about how The goal of the Denver Communists is to get their ideas out there to provoke mass action. They're not running for political election. They're not running for political office. They're giving people ideas to try to radicalize people to a revolutionary socialist like society. Listen again as I try not to choke. Oh no.
And talking to people. We're doing that more than we're able to agitate for mass action or run for office. Not that that's on the table, but we participate in social movements and labor struggles to argue for how they can win, to argue for the need for mass action, to argue ideas, to try to win people radicalized by a struggle to a socialist standpoint. Okay, there's a section on political clarification, and Armstrong talks about how the process of political clarification among communists has taken different forms throughout history. So Marx and Engels had to develop an analysis of capitalism and establish the core theoretical basis for the communist movement. They also played a role in building revolutionary organizations and producing mass propaganda, but they really set a baseline, or a new baseline. The Bolsheviks had to master a range of theoretical and strategic questions: the imperialist nature of World War II, the need to turn the war into a civil war against their own ruling class, the rediscovery of Marxist teachings that the capitalist state must be smashed for workers to come to power, the rejection of stagism, how and when to launch an insurrection, many questions. Our tasks are different. We build on the shoulders of giants. We must critically study and absorb Marxist ideas, update them, and train cadre that can fight for them and apply them in struggle. We need to be patient and do the basic work of establishing a core of permanent persuaders capable of carrying the Marxist method into battle. So moving on, Armstrong says, if the first task of an interventionist propaganda...
Listen, not trying to make you feel bad, but what I'm going to tell you is that you right now, what is going on is you are coping with the cognitive dissonance of the fact that your conservative influencers have lied to you for a really long time. That's what this is. This is a cope. What you're doing is you are desperate to grasp onto this idea and cling on to this idea that liberals are communists. You are desperate to cling on to this idea that Democrats are communists, because you've been hearing this from all your favorite influencers for years and years and years and years and years. And now you're hearing real communists talk about how much they hate liberals, or you will hear about it if you stick around the channel. You're hearing that real communists don't want to run for office. They don't like Biden any more than they like Trump. They don't like Kamala Harris any more than they like Trump. And this is creating confusion. And now you're trying to grasp onto the idea saying, no, liberals really are the same as communists. Would I say that liberal ideology and policies make fertile ground for leftist groups? No. Not in any way. Because what liberal people do has no relation to what communists and socialists do. Has no relation. The only reason you think it has relation is because conservative influencers have lied over and over and over and over and over again for decades and decades and decades to convince their audiences that liberals and Democrats are communists when they are not. And in the process of doing so, they have run cover for real communists and real socialists. So no, there is no universe in which liberal ideology or liberal policies support leftist groups. And the first people to tell you that would actually be the leftist groups. So I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but that's reality. You've been lied to by conservative media. If you watch conservative media, you've been lied to by conservative media.
group is ideological clarification, or establishing a commitment to Marxist theory and traditions. The second,
no, 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 no. Liberalism is not a gateway to leftism. Liberals engage in capitalism. Liberals want capitalism. Leftists, communists, socialists, they do not want capitalism. They're two completely different things. There is not a gateway drug to this.
is to build a bigger group. And he says there can be no compromises or concessions
Cool.
with
Thanks, Soquest.
eclectic, soft left ideas that fudge political questions. Cadre must be able to scientifically evaluate the development of class struggle and society in order to figure out how to take advantage of these developments. They must understand and be able to carry out the mechanics of building the organization. So Marxist groups try to relate to the vanguard. Marxist interventionist propaganda groups try to relate to the vanguard, the most politically conscious section of the class and the already established left-wing forces.
The most militant.
We do not try to appeal to everyone. Doing so would be a mistake of mistaking ourselves for a mass party, that's able to agitate that way. And it would hold us back in our current state. But currently there is no organized political vanguard in any meaningful sense, no mass socialist organization, and no significant current of politicized workers that revolutionaries can orient to. But periodically, mass movements erupt that radicalize and organize significant numbers into activity.
Periodically, mass movements erupt that radicalize and organize people into activity. That's what's going on right now. So they're saying this isn't stuff that, they have been. So, okay, one of the things you have to understand about communists is communists always have to feel that they're losing because they're in the perpetual struggle. The revolution is perpetual. The revolution is never ending. Tommy, listen. Tommy, no. Tommy, there are a lot of new people here. New people are going to have questions. I don't feel like I'm being trolled by new people asking questions. Tommy, you're still you've only been here for a couple weeks, bro. Settle down. Tommy is Scottish. We need to tell him to settle the fuck down sometimes. All right. Just yell at him in the chat if he's getting out of control. But there are new people here. They're allowed to ask questions. Okay. But basically, so communists always have to feel like they're losing because the revolution is perpetual. And so they always kind of downplay the impact of what they're doing. But what they're saying is listen, we're basically organizing because the revolution could break out at any moment. And what he's talking about is actually happening literally right now. You and James Lindsay agree that no. To be very clear, James Lindsay and I do not fucking agree on almost anything. I think James Lindsay's a low IQ retard that is intellectually dishonest on a good day, that is downright fraudulent on most days. So no, I appreciate the money though. Thank you for the money. James Lindsay and I do not agree. No. We definitely don't agree on Gnosticism, I'll tell you that. Listen to this again.
Socialist organization and no significant current of politicized workers that revolutionaries can orient to. But periodically, mass movements erupt that radicalize and organize significant numbers into activity. And we have to be there. Interventionist propaganda groups won't be in a position to lead the struggle, but we can argue strategy, lead the struggle on a mass level. Certainly we can lead small struggles, but we can argue strategy. We can make concrete proposals for a way forward. We can draw out lessons at all stages of struggle. We can point out the role of the police, the media, the government, the trade unions, and connect particular issues with a broader critique of capitalism. So Armstrong goes on to has a section about like working among students, and
Working
we
among
in Firebrand have
students.
largely rejected that laser focus on campus organizing.
Oh,
Though not for the crude workerist reasons that some socialists do, like considering students to
workerist.
be petty bourgeois or whatever the fuck. But we recommend an organic approach to organizing. We recommend and have adopted an organic approach. Like, we fight where we stand, we get in where we fit in. That was corny. I can't believe I wrote that. We're against artificial implantation in student or workplace organizing, at least in the near term.
Yo.
Uh,
This is actually funny because, okay, so we watch a lot of different socialist groups. Socialists shit talk each other all the time. The different you even heard that at the beginning of this presentation, he was kind of shit talking Socialist Alternative, because like a month and a half ago, the Denver Communists and Socialist Alternative, which are two different groups, kind of did a presentation together. And apparently some things that Socialist Alternative said when they did that presentation pissed off members of the Denver Communists. And so now this guy's actually the head of the Denver Communists. He had to come onto this presentation and say, listen, we're very different than Socialist Alternative, because whatever Socialist Alternative said, and I remember we watched the meetings, but I don't know exactly what pissed them off, but something that Socialist Alternative said like a month and a half ago pissed off people in the Denver Communists. And so now they're going to shit talk Socialist Alternative on their call. They shit talk each other all the time. They shit talk the Democrats. They shit talk the liberals. It's just like people who say the left doesn't have infighting. Oh no, the left has a lot of infighting. But what I would say is that oftentimes leftists are much better about putting aside their differences if there's opportunity to work together than people on the right. But yeah, they shit talk each other an incredible amount.
Socialist Horizon has a group in San Marcos. They're comprised of a
Or
professor
Socialist Horizon,
and
not Socialist
some
Alternative.
students, and they should be organizing on campus. You know, and a similar principle applies to labor organizing. Branches with members with good organizing opportunities in their workplaces or unions should pursue them. In Denver, we have organized support committees around members in critical positions and in critical periods, including a teacher and a radical caucus in their union. But we're not fixated on unionized workers or industrial workers like some socialists are. I was glad to hear Bill Mullen with Socialist Horizon, I'm not sure if you're here, Bill, recommend a focus on social reproduction theory.
Oh, social reproduction theory. My favorite. Who wants to take a stab at what social reproduction theory is in the chat? We love social reproduction theory. We talk about social reproduction theory a lot. Social reproduction theory is the idea that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. Okay? So what the left means when they say social reproduction theory is that the capitalist system will reproduce itself until the reproduction mechanism of capitalism is disrupted. Socialists believe the nuclear family is the reproduction mechanism of capitalism because people get married, which is a capitalist relationship. They have children. They raise those children with capitalist values, and thus capitalism is reproduced through the nuclear family because they are raising the children with capitalist values to teach them to be good proletarian workers who will eventually replace the current workers who are currently oppressed by capitalism. The reason the left wants to abolish the nuclear family is because, based on social reproduction theory, they think that they need to disrupt the means of reproduction of capitalism, which is the nuclear family. And by the way, the Denver Communist has a great presentation that explains all of this. We're going to watch it someday, just not yet, because you guys aren't ready for it yet. The new people aren't ready for that presentation yet, but it is actually a great presentation. We've already watched it twice on the channel, and I will show it to you someday, but I'm working your way up to it. We're going to get some basic stuff in first. And but that's why they want to abolish the nuclear family. So we talk about that a lot. Anytime you hear social reproduction theory or SRT, that is what they're referring to.
To me, that cuts against the class reductionist and workerist trends in the socialist movement, and we need to do that. I do want to highlight one point Armstrong makes in this section about students. He says small socialist groups may tend toward abstract propagandism, which pulls them away from relating to people's real concerns and into sectarian irrelevance. So we need to consciously look for ways to interact with people and to participate in and be relevant in struggle in order to minimize this danger of like slipping into abstract propagandism, which we're opposed to. Another related issue that has come up in the history of the socialist movement is what some have called programitis, which is the focus on developing the perfect political program that will solve all of humanity's needs in advance of anyone adopting it, and fixating on the development of this perfect program rather than like arming ourselves with a basic framework and then throwing ourselves into struggle. So yeah, practical involvement in struggle is a necessary counterpart to theoretical training. And then Armstrong goes on to
what he just said, by the way, is it's not enough to know the theory of socialism and communism. You actually have to do it. You have to go out and do it in the real world. You have to struggle. When they say struggle, they mean engage in the revolution. So it's not enough to just read a whole bunch of papers and talk about philosophy. They actually have to go, yes, praxis. I fucking hate the word praxis. I don't use that word. But yes, this is a good opportunity to it's doing stuff in the real world, essentially.
Say that socialists must develop a propaganda routine and be able to relate to people.
Oh yeah, propaganda.
A propaganda routine of public meetings, social media, writing articles, flyers, raising.
Do you notice how they call basic communications propaganda? Socialists must develop a propaganda routine to include meetings and flyers and protests and newspapers and social media and all that stuff.
And be able to training. And then Armstrong goes on to say that socialists must develop a propaganda routine and be able to relate to people, a propaganda routine of public meetings, social media, writing articles, flyers, raising slogans at protests, etc. Such a routine forces us to look outward and address people outside our ranks who only agree with some of our arguments. I would say we also need intervention routines, and we have them. We may not be able to lead thousands into action, but we can and should make forays into agitation where possible. We can work in social movements and trade unions. We can join existing struggles and organize our own actions and campaigns. We can use the United Front tactic, or the spirit of the United Front tactic, since it's not since our conditions are different than what it was developed for. But we can generally use the United Front tactic to fight both alongside reformists and to distinguish ourselves from them. And we have to be able to relate to people on a range of questions. We need to be able to take up specific issues and show how they fit into a Marxist analysis of what's wrong with the world. Next week we're going to be reading some of What Is to Be Done, and Justin's from Socialist Horizon is going to be talking about that. But this idea of being able to relate to people on a number of questions or a range of questions makes me think of Lenin's ideal of the tribune of the people. He talks about that in What Is to Be Done. We have to be able to react to every manifestation of tyranny and oppression and generalize them to produce a single picture of police violence and capitalist exploitation.
Capitalist
and
exploitation.
To continually point to class struggle as the way out.
Class struggle means revolution.
So wrapping up here, yes, consciousness changes in struggle, and without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. How do we square that circle? Through the art and science of Bolshevism, of course. So as Armstrong says, I think our tasks are to develop a clear and deep understanding of Marxist politics, to develop a layer of cadre that can apply those politics by putting them into practice, and relating to an audience, and making the rubber hit the road. We cannot change the objective ebbs and flows of class struggle, but subjective forces like the coherence of our groups, the clarity of our perspectives, and the experience and confidence of our members matter. By embracing our role as interventionist propaganda groups, we can make headway against the pace of events, and hope to do so with y'all. Thanks.
All right, that's the end of that presentation. Brian says, they articulate their struggle and goals very well. I feel I'm not equipped to eloquently argue why they are bad and must be stopped. Listen, Brian, the goal is not actually to argue why they're bad and must be stopped. The goal is to educate people on what the left are saying and doing and what the left actually believes. That's where you have to start. Because if you're always in your head going, why is this bad? Why is this bad? Why is this bad? You're not actually going to be learning anything. So just don't do that goal. Your goal here is to learn what the left actually believes. Learn what the left actually thinks. Okay, guys, I want to do one more presentation. I want to do this student intifada presentation because I think it'll be a nice practical application of some of these ideas. Because in this, they're actually talking about, it's more of like an after action review of like the campus protests and the encampments and stuff like that. But before we hit play on this one, how are people feeling? How for all the new people who are here, how is your first time watching socialism been so far? I know I've kind of like thrown you guys into it, but I'm curious how new people are taking to this. We are going to be watching this one last thing called Advances, Limits, and Lessons of the Student Intifada. So it's going to be more like they're talking about, here is what the student protest and encampment did, and here's what we can learn from it. Every problem is solved by communism? Yes, because they believe that every problem is created by capitalism. Communism will overthrow capitalism, and therefore all problems will be solved when capitalism is overthrown. Don't go beyond that. The rest of that is just trying to debunk. What you need to know is they believe capitalism created all problems, and therefore overthrowing capitalism will solve all problems. Okay, let's continue. Last presentation. Let me know if you guys have questions. Let me know if you have observations in the chat. I would honestly love to hear them.
Of Gaza solidarity encampments on college campuses around the world has been a welcome and unexpected shot in the arm for the Palestine liberation movement. In hindsight, the pot simmered on campuses for months before boiling over. Last fall, universities around the country...
Hang on. So I suspect, and Brian, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I suspect there are many people that might be in the same place as you. Maybe you're feeling horrified. Maybe you're feeling scared. You feel stupid that you had your head in the sand. You're like, how the fuck did I miss this? You were never shown this. This is a subculture. What we're doing is we're doing a deep dive into a subculture. And if you didn't know this subculture existed, you didn't have your head in the sand. You just weren't given the information. Yeah, see, you see, this is the thing. It's like you thought like commies were Reddit mods or like Vosh and Hassan Piker. No, real communists are there. There is a real communist subculture. So don't feel bad and don't kick yourself if you never had access to this stuff, because every single person here has been through this. Every single person who's been watching my content has literally been exactly where you are. It can be shocking. It can be horrifying. It can be anger-inducing. It can be extremely frustrating. And just chill, man. Just chill. We're all here for you. We've all been in the same place. If you need to vent in the chat about how much people suck to have not shown you this, please feel free to do so. I don't mind that at all. Just don't be a dick to me and don't be a dick to anyone else in the chat. And it's all good.
Suspended chapters of Jewish Voice for Peace and Students for Justice in Palestine on specious grounds. Supporters of Palestine were attacked by doxing trucks circling campuses and at Columbia University, skunk spray. Earlier this year, a new McCarthyist assault on academic freedom presaged a literal police assault on students and faculty daring to use that freedom. Many professors were fired or put on leave for expressing solidarity with Palestine, and Harvard's first Black woman president resigned for being insufficiently Zionist.
Holy shit. Holy shit. I love it when we have communists that are like unironically absolutely correct about something that you're not supposed to say out loud. The communist just said that Claudine Gay was forced out of her job as president of Harvard because she was insufficiently Zionist, which is actually the truth. The right can pretend that they went after Claudine Gay because she had a plagiarism scandal or whatever. But that's not why Claudine Gay was forced out of the presidency at Harvard. If Claudine Gay had been Jewish, she never would have been forced out of the presidency at Harvard. I promise you. She was forced out of the presidency because she was not sufficiently Zionist, and the Denver communists completely have Chris Rufo's number on that, and I think that that's hilarious, actually.
Expressing solidarity with Palestine, and Harvard's first Black woman president resigned for being insufficiently Zionist. On April 9th, a UC Berkeley law professor attacked a student giving a pro-Palestine speech at a dinner for law school graduates. A week later, the University of Southern California canceled the commencement speech of their valedictorian, Asnat Tabassum, after Zionists smeared her pro-Palestine views as anti-Semitic. Then a new intifada was born. On April 17th, Columbia students established the first Gaza Solidarity Encampment. They set up tents on campus and demanded divestment from companies and institutions that profit from the Zionist entity, in addition to an academic boycott of Israeli universities and an end to policing on campus. The camp was smashed by the NYPD the day after it was erected, thanks to a cartel of billionaire bosses pressuring the mayor of New York. But instead of quelling dissent, the brutal police attack escalated it and multiplied it across 140 U.S. campuses. And
actually, this is true. This is true, what he's saying here. So the reason that the college encampments got so out of proportion last year in 2024 was entirely because the NYPD was brought onto campus. This is the cardinal mistake that Columbia made last year that took what was a relatively small protest of like socialists and communists on their campus, and it blew it out of proportion. So why did bringing the NYPD onto campus at Columbia in 2014 have that effect? Well, there is nothing that socialists and communists hate more than the police. Abolish the police. Defund the police. Their thing against ICE is exactly their same thing against the police. So every time they're complaining about ICE, they say exactly the same thing about the police. Columbia had last year a relatively small group of students that like they set up tents on the lawn, but they actually weren't really doing much of anything. And then Columbia made the boneheaded decision to call the NYPD on these students to get them to take down their tents. This was the first time that the NYPD had been onto Columbia's campus since 1968 because Columbia is extremely leftist, they're extremely socialist, they're extremely communist, and they don't like the police. And so they literally had the police banned from campus. So when they brought the police onto campus last year, what they did is they pissed off all the students, and people who weren't already involved in the protests were like, oh, motherfucker. And so that was the biggest mistake that Columbia made, because the next day after they called the police, the encampment quadrupled in size. And this was before they took over the building, by the way. People say, well, Karlyn, they took over a building. Of course, they were going to call the police. This was before all that. So the reason that the thing got large enough to where they took over a building is because they made the colossal mistake of calling the police in the first place. They should have handled it a different way. I'm not saying they shouldn't have handled it. I'm saying they should have handled it in a different way. And had they understood how much these leftist students hate the police, then they wouldn't have done that, because that was the thing that set it all off. Was it a deliberate move? No, because the administration at Columbia is stupid. The administrators are stupid. That's why they did it.
The day after it was erected, thanks to a cartel of billionaire bosses pressuring the mayor of New York. But instead of quelling dissent, the brutal police attack escalated it and multiplied it across 140 US campuses and 25 countries around the world at last count. Encampments spread as if authorities had thrown water on a grease fire. The proliferation of student protests caused by a harsh crackdown follows a pattern seen in Berkeley in 1964, Paris in 68, and many times since, South Korea in 1980, South Africa in 2015, and elsewhere. Expressions of gratitude and praise for the encampments poured forth from Gaza. Palestinians and campus activists exchanged messages with spray paint on the side of their tents, some pitched in Rafah refugee camps, others in Ivy League quads. One of Gaza's most cherished social media reporters, 25-year-old Wizard Bisan Oda, posted, "I've never felt hope like this, never." Gazans christened the movement within a movement the Student Intifada. The student protesters have demonstrated tremendous tenacity.
Will they ever declare war on the police one day? They already have. They declared war on the police literally decades ago.
Creativity, combativity, and dedication to Palestine. In addition to encampments, protesters have engaged in sit-ins, teach-ins, street blockades, disruptions of graduation ceremonies, demonstrations at regents' homes, and building occupations, most famously, militantly, and lastingly at Cal Poly Humboldt. Some encampments grew to include libraries, medic and mess tents, Muslim daily prayers, Jewish Passover Seder and Shabbat dinners, and their own graduation ceremonies.
Okay, so I just want people to notice this. Do you guys know how the right is always saying that the college protesters are anti-Semitic, 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 pro-Hamas, pro-Hamas, pro-Hamas? The communist, who is completely on the side of the students, is literally telling you that they were engaging in Passover Seders and Shabbat. Anyone who says the campus protesters are anti-Semitic Jew haters are flat out lying. And first of all, this is a communist presentation talking about their comrades on the college campus. If this was actually about Jew hate or anti-Semitism, they wouldn't be saying, yeah, we do daily prayers and Jewish Passover and Shabbat dinner and all that stuff. There are Jewish groups involved in the encampments. And so I say this to people because if you notice people saying Jew haters, Jew haters, Jew haters, anti-Semitic, 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 those people are liars. They're not telling you the truth. There is no evidence of this being anything about hating the Jews at all. If you actually listen to real communists, they will never say anything about hating Jewish people. They talk about Zionism and they talk about Israel as the settler colonists. Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution. How do I know Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution? Because I had two members of the Revolutionary Communists of America come onto my channel many months ago, and they flat out told me that Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution.
Shabbat dinners, and their own graduation ceremonies. The function of higher education is to reproduce ruling class ideology and prepare students to work for or manage on behalf of capital.
Oh, okay. Press 1 in the chat if you think that communists and socialists support the universities. Press 2 in the chat if you think that communists and socialists would be perfectly happy to see the universities destroyed. 1 in the chat if you believe that communists and socialists support the universities. 2 in the chat if you believe that communists and socialists would be perfectly happy to see the universities destroyed. Didn't some Jewish students get confronted by these people? Not because they were Jewish. It's not because they were Jewish. Anyone who said otherwise is lying to you. 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. Lots of twos. Lots of twos. The twos come from all the regulars, I think. So, communists and socialists believe that the universities have been capitulated to capitalism. This is why they have no problem ripping down the universities. This is why they have no problem doing activism at the universities, because they believe that the universities capitulate to capitalism, and the only reason that they believe the only purpose of the universities is to produce future students that are going to support capitalism. Now listen to them say it.
The function of higher education is to reproduce ruling class ideology and prepare students to work for or manage on behalf of capital.
The function of higher education is to reproduce ruling class ideology and prepare students to work for or manage on behalf of capital. The communists are telling you that they believe the function of the universities is to support capitalism. Therefore, they are against the universities as an institution.
Elite schools train those who will eventually run the state, media, and other important bourgeois institutions and corporations.
Oh!
The Gaza Solidarity encampments have exposed universities' specific role in relation to Palestine, to ideologically justify, materially fund, and profit from Zionism and imperialism. The fact that schools, and particularly Ivy League schools, have become breeding grounds for anti-Zionism and anti-imperialism poses a threat to the ideological and institutional reproduction of capitalism.
True.
The refusal of appreciable numbers of students.
Wait. Let's pull this apart. Listen again.
Schools have become. The fact that schools, and particularly Ivy League schools, have become breeding grounds for anti-Zionism and anti-imperialism poses a threat to the ideological and institutional reproduction of capitalism.
So they're saying the fact that the students are so anti-Zionist is a threat to the university reproducing capitalism. To socialists and communists, Zionism and capitalism are the same thing. Israel are the settler colonists. The settler colonists mean the bourgeois capitalists who stole the land from the Palestinians. Zionism and capitalism are the same thing. This is not about being Jewish. It is about the state of Israel, the capitalist state of Israel. Just like they believe the United States is a capitalist state, they believe Israel is a capitalist state. Israel stole the land from the indigenous people, privatized it for their use. That is the very definition of capitalism. That is why they are against Israel. It's not because they're Jewish, it's because they took the land. It's the same reason they're against the United States. It's because the Constitution protects private property ownership. Does everyone understand this? Thanks, Scott, for the super chat. He cropped on programism, but isn't that exactly what communism is? A program for a perfect world? Well, I don't know. I don't know if I would characterize it that way, Scott, but I do appreciate the super chat. Yeah, this doesn't matter. What you're trying to do is debunk them, but like this doesn't actually matter. Who stole the land doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. We're talking about what they believe.
The refusal of appreciable numbers of students to go along and get along is intolerable to the ruling class. The camps have also exposed bourgeois society's lack of respect for its own self-proclaimed values, its rights, and its institutions. Our rights to free speech and assembly depend on the content of that speech and the convenience of that assembly. Institutions of higher learning, supposedly dedicated to academic freedom, critical thinking, and the pursuit of truth, have brought in outside agitators with badges and guns to terrorize and evict students
The police.
with six-figure debts that prove they belong there.
With the police, that's the police.
USC censored their valedictorian, their best trained student, to suppress her training, specifically her training in resistance to genocide, which was her minor. Universities have continued to romanticize and recruit on the basis of their radical history while trying to suffocate their radical present. The occupation for Palestine at Columbia was smashed on the 56th anniversary of the smashing of the occupations against racism and the Vietnam War at Columbia. The first obstacle faced by the encampments has been repression by police and school authorities. Over 3,000 protesters have been arrested in the US so far. In addition to directing the police attacks, schools have censored, suspended, and expelled student protesters and evicted them from their housing. When political horizons open up and radical change begins to seem possible, those in power leap into action and to re-narrow those horizons and reassert the status quo. Repression alone has limits and can backfire. A carrot and stick strategy that combines repression with minor, partial, God damn it. The first obstacle faced by the encampments has been repression by the police and school authorities. Over 3,000 protesters have been arrested in the US so far. In addition to directing the police attacks, schools have censored, suspended, and expelled student protesters and evicted them from their housing. When political horizons open up and radical change begins to seem possible, those in power leap into action to re-narrow those horizons and reassert the status quo. Repression alone has limits and can backfire. A carrot and stick strategy that combines repression with minor, partial, or merely symbolic concessions works best. Though touted by the left as a victory, Evergreen State College in Washington was able to placate protesters into dismantling their occupation by merely setting up a task force to assess its investments.
I love this. The Denver communists were like, the Evergreen protesters capitulated to capitalism because they got a task force? Fuck those guys. That's actually hilarious that they're shit-talking the Evergreen State College protesters. And this is like years later.
That combines repression with minor, partial, or merely symbolic concessions works best. Though touted by the left as a victory, Evergreen State College in Washington was able to placate protesters into dismantling their occupation by merely setting up a task force to assess its investments. Many others decamped after similar quote-unquote wins. Rewarding civility and compromise while punishing disruption and defiance is a tried and true way to neutralize social movements. Good protester versus bad protester narratives.
See, they're learning from it. They're saying, don't fucking negotiate. This is like an after action. They're saying, listen, all these different student groups that they negotiated with the administration, they capitulated. They bent the knee at the end of the day. So what we have to learn from this is don't negotiate.
Aren't only aimed at the general public, but at the movement itself, much of which may accept the logic of its enemies. The outside agitator narrative, which asserts that only students and faculty are legitimate protesters on campus, has been adopted by many protesters and it's been successful at undercutting solidarity, support, and the expansion of the movement. Vigilante violence has been another obstacle for the student intifada. Zionists joined forces with white nationalists and neo-Nazis to attack the UCLA camp with metal rods, planks of
They didn't actually join forces with neo-Nazis. They're not saying that literally.
Wood, fireworks, and bear mace, sending 25 students to the hospital. Police stood by and watched, then used the attack as a pretext to smash the severely weakened camp the next day. This melding of state and mob violence is a scaled-down version of the cooperative rampage that Israeli occupation forces and Zionist settlers have been on in the West Bank since October 7th. Gaza solidarity encampments around the world have been subjected to copycat vigilante attacks. Meanwhile, it is the encampments that have been branded as unsafe or even violent simply for their use of liberatory slogans.
True.
The Biden regime, bourgeois media, and the Anti-Defamation League have slandered protesters as anti-Semitic, even as Jewish activists have led the protests.
Communists calling out right-wing media online to people. I love it. I love it. That is actually 100% true. Because that has happened. These students are a pain. The students protesting on college campuses are a pain in the ass. They're annoying. They're wrong in how they view the world. Everything they believe is wrong. They are going to destroy society as we know it. But they are not fucking anti-Semitic. Has nothing to do with them being Jewish. At all. There are Jewish people involved in the protests. I'm so sick of hearing the Jew-hating anti-Semitism bullshit from the right. It's just like, it's so depressing every single time.
Meanwhile, it is the encampments that have been branded as unsafe or even violent simply for their use of liberatory slogans. The Biden regime, bourgeois media, and the Anti-Defamation League have slandered protesters as anti-Semitic, even as Jewish activists have led the protests. Robert Kraft, billionaire football team owner and mega donor to both Donald Trump and Columbia University, bashed students with full-page ads in several newspapers. In addition to being attacked or co-opted by the police, school administrators, vigilantes, state officials, and the media, the movement has had to grapple with internal political limitations, including pacifism, reformism, electoralism, and respectability politics. Liberal identity politics and, quote, centering Palestine has served as a rationale to make protesters obedient, well-behaved supporters lacking a political stake in the fight. When each encampment was established, the immediate question was how to persist despite police repression. For many, the question quickly became how to persist despite a lack of police repression. For instance, after an early effort to destroy the camp at Denver's Auraria campus, police and school officials mostly ignored it, limiting its media impact and allowing the inherent...
I was just on Adam Green's show like the other day. Adam Green and I did an episode where we were talking about the riots over the weekend. I think it was like on Saturday night or Sunday night or something like that. So yeah, I was just on his show the other day. Go watch it. Adam's great. I love Adam Green. I appreciate him quite a bit, actually.
Difficulties of maintaining an occupation to do the job for them. In addition to Students for Justice in Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace, the Palestinian Youth Movement, and various local groups and coalitions, many camps have been organized by socialist organizations with campus presences. These include Freedom Road Socialist Organization, mostly through their national front group, Students for a Democratic Society, and the Young Democratic Socialist.
See, this is the interesting stuff we learn. I didn't know Students for Democratic Society was a front group for Freedom Road Socialist Organization. I knew of Students for Democratic Society, obviously. I also knew of Freedom Road Socialist Organization. They protested the RNC. I think they protested the DNC as well. I didn't realize that Students for a Democratic Society was a front group for Freedom Road Socialist Organization. So this is the type of like wonky stuff we learn when we watch socialism, because they tell you, here are our groups, here's how we're organizing, here's who's working with who. That's actually a really interesting piece of information.
Include Freedom Road Socialist Organization, mostly through their national front group, Students for a Democratic Society, and the Young Democratic Socialists of America. Though there have been reports of democratic discussion and decision-making bodies, the encampments have generally been run in a top-down manner by small groups of activists, as is typical of social movement activism. When Rutgers University agreed to some concessions, including to merely discuss the possibility of divestment, the decision to accept the deal offered by the administration wasn't put to the encampment itself, but made by the unelected leaders with the help of a few faculty advisors before the hundreds of people who made up the camp and the wider sector supporting them had the opportunity to play an active role in developing strategy for the camp. Some organizers have used exclusionary and opaque decision-making processes, fueled by security culture and sectarian desires to control and own the movement. In these contexts, despite comprising the base of the movement, all but a select and unelected few have been excluded from helping to determine its next steps. This approach constrains protesters' political, strategic, and tactical development, which are necessary to advance the movement and class struggle more broadly. As a veteran student organizer from UC Santa Cruz explained, the best way to protect any legal and risky action on campus is with hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds or thousands.
Is the boycott, divest, sanction movement a completely socialist push? Yes. Now, that doesn't mean they're wrong, by the way. The boycott, divest, sanction movement actually has some legitimate points, but the boycott, divest, sanction movement is out of the Free Palestine movement. The Free Palestine movement has been around for a long time. The Free Palestine movement has been largely kind of like consumed and co-opted by the radical revolutionary far left at this point. And so, yes, the boycott, divest, sanction movement is almost a completely socialist push. Hey, dude, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. Have fun teaching algebra. Come back sometime.
Thousands of people who feel ownership of that, who feel like it's something we're all doing together. Few encampments have won much in the way of disclosure and divestment. Many university administrators have been able to get camps to disperse by promising to only discuss the matters. The Brown University and the faculty-led New School encampments pulled up stakes when their schools agreed to vote on divestment later in the year. Harvard agreed to discuss its endowment and reinstate suspended students. The University of Washington agreed to evaluate a proposal to divest from Israel, to be transparent and examine the university's relationship with Boeing and other weapons manufacturers, and to waive tuition for at least 20 students from Gaza. Portland State University paused receiving gifts and grants from Boeing until it holds a forum to debate their ethics. Some encampments won promises to disclose sometime in the future. Northwestern University students ended their encampment after administrators agreed to disclose their investments and increase support for Palestinian students and faculty on campus. In Denver, Metropolitan State University agreed to disclose their investments sometime in the future, and the University of Colorado at Denver didn't move an inch. After Bard College students occupied an administrative building for a weekend, the tiny school in upstate New York agreed to disclose its investments, elect an investment ethics committee, and to challenge the New York State executive order that bans investments in companies that boycott Israel. The only disclosure that has been made so far was by the University of California school system, which disclosed $32 billion invested in weapons manufacturers and other companies targeted by students. The next day, they said they had no plans to divest. The Student Intifada's biggest victory was won at Ireland's oldest university, where a 5-day encampment convinced Trinity College Dublin to divest, the only actual divestment so far. The unique social position held by students provides both advantages and limitations to their ability to advance social struggle. Though far from the utopian bastions of intellectual pursuit they claim to be, campuses remain one of the few sites where left-wing ideas can be openly explored. And with fewer financial responsibilities than workers, students can be more inclined to rebelliousness and risk-taking. This context gives students significant power to ignite and expand movements, makes them more volatile and sensitive to shifts in the ideological climate, and puts them at the forefront of emerging periods of radicalization. But students cannot paralyze production. They lack precisely the structural leverage that Spectre Journal's overly optimistic assessment ascribes to them. Though they have captured the imagination of the world and revitalized the Palestine liberation movement, even the most successful and militant encampments have barely disrupted business as usual. Students can provide the initial electrical charge, but to shock the system, it needs to jump circuits and become a wider social crisis, ultimately at the point of production. The best example of this phenomenon was in France in 1968, when police repression of student occupations led trade union confederations to call for sympathy strikes that quickly turned into the largest general strike in history, and a wildcat strike at that. Echoing this dynamic, academic workers at the University of California are currently on an inspiring political strike that has taken up the movement's demands for disclosure, divestment, cutting ties with the Zionists.
That's actually true. This is actually really unreported on the right, where, so I don't know if people know this, there are mass strikes all throughout the University of California system, and it's all related back to this. Oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, I don't see, you know, people ask me why I don't want to go on Tim Pool's show, and it's kind of like, if you really think that Mike Harlow is the peak of Pete, like Tim Pool, no offense to any Tim Pool fans, like whoever you want, watch whoever you want, I don't really care. But like, if you really think that Mike Harlow is the peak of what people need to hear from, you are running a show for low IQ retards and garbage human beings. And there's no reason for me to interact with that, like, at all. So I hope Mikey is having fun trying to be famous on the internet. I do think it's so funny that Mikey can't seem to actually get any of his YouTube channel or his content to grow or anything like that. And basically he does nothing of value in the world. But you know, I hope he has fun going on someone else's show and pretending to know what he's talking about when he doesn't know anything. Anyway. Karlyn doesn't get it. For the right, anti-Zionism and anti-Israel will always mean anti-Semitic because it is a Christian perspective. That's fucking retarded. And that just means there are a lot of retarded Christians on the right. And they're lying to people, and no one actually cares because this is about understanding what the left thinks anyway. I start to get a little bit punchy as the stream goes on longer. I don't know if you guys can tell. Yeah. Oh, just wait until Tim Pool talks about communism someday, and then someone's going to tell me Tim Pool talked about communism, and then I'm going to drag Tim Pool for an hour and a half on my channel ranting about all the things that Tim Pool doesn't know about communism. Tim Pool is so fucking far behind us, it's not even funny.
Entity and the defense of protest. Alongside few material gains, the student intifada has made significant ideological gains. At the end of the day, the demands are vital, according to a Bard College student protester. But what is most important about what happened here was the building of community around radical political education and building solidarity across class and across all backgrounds. While Marxists seek to sharpen the class lines rather than paper over them, the overall point is a good one. Arab and Muslim youth have resurrected the spirit of student radicalism that helped end the Vietnam War and South African apartheid. A new generation of Jewish activists has decoupled Judaism from Zionism and anti-Zionism from anti-Semitism. The movement has gone beyond condemning the particular policies of the apartheid state to condemning its very existence. Thousands have been willing to engage in disruptive and illegal action for Palestine. Most have followed the model of passive civil disobedience that has been held up as the only proper approach since the civil rights movement. Cal Poly Humboldt students responded to police batons by bonking the
Breaking news. I'm saying this mostly because Master Shake is in the chat and Mizakan's in the chat too, and I think they'll find this amusing. Breaking news, James Lindsay has tweeted 8 minutes ago. The woke right is showing itself to be right-wing Alinskyeites. They're trying to force Trump, their enemy, to live up to his own book of rules in a distorted way and trying to turn his actions into bad PR for him, just like the woke left does. Do you want to know what that means? People demanding. So what James Lindsay is saying is people who are demanding that Trump does not take us to war with Iran because Trump was supposed to be the anti-war president. James is arguing that if you don't want to go to war with Iran, then that literally makes you Saul Alinsky because you're trying to get Trump to do the thing that Trump said he was going to do. That is the current argument from the classical liberal set of the community. I just cannot even.
Police with a water jug and chanting, "We are not afraid of you." This chapter of the Palestine Solidarity Movement has shattered previously impenetrable paradigms, seeded the ground for a new generation of activists, and proliferated anti-imperialist and socialist politics. But durable organizational forms are needed to maintain the gains in mass consciousness. So how will the status quo reassert itself? The whole ruling class and both of its parties are unswervingly dedicated to the US imperial project. The Zionist state plays a critical role in that project as watchdog, weapons laboratory, and in Netanyahu's words, mighty aircraft carrier of our common civilization. Democrat and Republican officials, the police, media, and their own schools have all been arrayed against the students. To support Palestine, as it turns out, one must oppose the whole system. This creates greater potential for radicalization than other issues.
To support Palestine, one must oppose the whole system. Is that system capitalism that we're opposing now?
Aid against the students. To support Palestine, as it turns out, one must oppose the whole system. This creates greater potential for radicalization than other issues. With the lesser evil drenched in the blood of
what he just said is if you can get people in the Free Palestine movement, you can radicalize them on other issues relating to anti-capitalism as well.
37,000 and counting, lesser evilism makes less sense than ever. A new generation has experienced the lesser evil behaving just like the greater evil due to the increasing convergence of liberalism and conservatism.
The increasing convergence of liberalism and conservatism. It's kind of like they think that liberals are no different than conservatives.
The emergence of the term Genocide Joe was a political step forward for the movement last fall, but it will become a setback if blame is limited to Biden and his regime, rather than his whole genocidal party and its ugly fraternal twin, the Republican Party, in addition to the class they represent and the capitalist system itself, which underpins all imperialism. Similarly, we don't stop at blaming Netanyahu or his party. We blame Zionism.
See, it's almost as if the universe winked at you. Is imperial also synonymous with capitalism? Yes. Imperialism is considered to be the highest form of capitalism. That's Lenin. Let's listen again. Listen to them say it again.
Conservatism. The emergence of the term Genocide Joe was a political step forward for the movement last fall, but it will become a setback if blame is limited to Biden and his regime, rather than his whole genocidal party and its ugly fraternal twin, the Republican Party, in addition to the class they represent and the capitalist system itself, which underpins all imperialism.
So he just said the Democratic Party is no different than the Republican Party. They all represent the bourgeois capitalist class, and imperialism, capitalism, underpins all of it.
Similarly, we don't stop at blaming Netanyahu or his party. We blame Zionism. When Denver's Democrat mayor tried to appeal to the encampment his police had just brutalized, a member of the Denver Communists shouted him down with, "The Democrats are over." This unleashed the fury of the crowd, which admirably wouldn't let the mayor get another word out.
So the communists were yelling at the Democrats that the Democrats are over.
But are the Democrats over? Will the Palestine Solidarity Movement break from the party or just from Biden and his regime? It's not looking good. The compounding errors of popular front politics, electoral fetishism, and lesser evilism predominate in the Palestine Solidarity Movement. From the beginning, most participants have considered the movement to be a pressure campaign on Democrats, rather than an effort to develop the independent power of working class and oppressed people and flex it in our schools, streets, and workplaces. This was perhaps most clearly evident in the campaign to vote uncommitted in the Democratic Party primaries, which was not a rebuke of Biden, but an effort to save his chances of re-election. Many who honored the martyr, Professor Rifat Al-Arir, ignore his last tweet. Quote, "The Democratic Party and Biden are responsible for the Gaza genocide perpetrated by Israel," end quote. The squad has managed.
So I just wanted to note again, they literally believe that the Democrats are responsible for what's going on in the Middle East.
To retain their progressive bona
almost done,
fides,
guys, almost there.
Despite being party to genocide and repeatedly voting to fund and support the Zionist entity. Jamal Iron Dome Bowman's campaign for re-election was just endorsed by the New York City Democratic Socialists of America because his opponent's Zionism is more virulent than his own. Under the slogan, "Palestine is on the ballot," the DSA and some Palestine coalitions have prioritized campaigning for Democrats over pro-Palestine activism, and worse, combined and blurred the lines between the two. Democratic candidates have been allowed to turn Gaza solidarity encampments into campaign stops, including those who have condemned Palestinian military resistance, like Greg Kazar in Austin, Tim Hernandez in Denver, and Dean Preston in San Francisco. The encampment tactic has mostly exhausted itself for now, at least in the US, but the wider movement that it's part of lives on and should learn from it. As communists, we fight for immediate aims as part and parcel of the wider fight against the whole existing social and political order. So our tasks are twofold and integrated: to build the Palestine liberation movement and to build forces dedicated to overthrowing the whole system. Regarding immediate aims, to end the genocide and liberate Palestine, we must do everything we can to popularize, democratize, proletarianize, nationalize, and ultimately internationalize the movement, as well as to sharpen its politics. We must foster a democratic culture, tap into the greater social power of organized.
When they say democratic, they don't mean Democrat Party, they mean socialism.
Workers, and develop means of coordination at the local, regional, national, and international levels. Regarding the wider fight, we need to point out and clarify the connections between the Palestinian liberation struggle, every other struggle against oppression and exploitation, and the fight against capitalism itself. We need to organize around and intervene in struggle with uncompromisingly revolutionary politics. For any uptick in struggle, the gains it can achieve and the political legacy it leaves for the future depends in part on the intervention of organized political forces. As ever, our opponents are better organized, funded, and validated by the ruling class. Compared to the well-equipped armies of reaction and reformism, revolutionaries are left to fight with the equivalent of paragliders and tunnel networks. But as Leon Trotsky said, if the blade is sharp, if our politics are clear, coherent, and correct, a small axe can fell a large tree.
All right. If you made it to the end, congratulations. That was 3 communist presentations today. I think we did pretty well. I do have to take off now, guys, because I have another show starting in about half an hour. It is not a show about politics. It is not a show about communism. It is a show that Jennifer and I do on Tuesday nights. Jennifer's in the chat. There she is. And we talk about spirituality on Tuesday nights. Okay. So if you aren't into woo-woo spiritual stuff, don't come back to the channel in half an hour. We're going to be talking about woo-woo spiritual stuff. But I hope everyone who made it to the very end, especially all you new people who made it to the very end, I hope you appreciate communism a little bit more. I hope you keep coming back. This was a pretty tame excursion into the Denver communists, if I'm being honest about it. I think all the new people did really good. I really like the questions that we got in the chat. There's so much more for me to show you, though. So if you enjoyed this little peek into the communist utopia, oh, just wait. I have some other tricks up my sleeve this week that you guys are going to freak out about. So this is what we do on the channel. I cover the radical revolutionary far left. If you appreciate it, please make sure you subscribe to my Substack. I post updates over there. I do live streams over there that are exclusive to Substack. I do clips over there. I have articles and write-ups and things like that. I have a massive archive of information. If you appreciate what I'm doing, please feel free to sign up as a supporter for $8 a month, $80 a year. Make sure you have mounted the like button for me over here. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you are not already. And if you don't come and join us for spiritual night at 9 p.m., which is fine if you don't, by the way, it's very woo. You don't have to. It's fine. But if you don't, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. and we'll do it all over again. All right. Thanks, guys. Congrats to everyone who made it to the very end, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Would you give me some idea?
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.